Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this morning's meeting of the Maricopa County Board of Adjustment. Rosalie, if you could please do the roll call.
Present.
Present.
Member Ward. Member Schwartz.
Present.
Member Clark.
Present.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go into the chairman announcements, but before I get into that, most of the public could care less, and probably a lot of applicants as well. But there are a number of people behind the scenes that keep this going, and I can never thank them enough. First is the IT folks, Alicia, Martine, David, and I know there's others that have been doing a thankless job behind the scenes to keep this going both online and with us just even today. And then of course there's the entire planning department, which is represented here by Tom and Darren and Rachel and Daniel, and I saw Joe somewhere, and I know I'm missing a couple of others, but anyway, I appreciate everything that everybody does to get us here. And Matt, couldn't forget Matt. Do you want to stand up, Matt? Anyway, with that said, I'll move on to the announcements. One, this meeting has been noticed in accordance with the open meeting laws of ARS 38-431. Agendas are available within 24 hours of each meeting in the Maricopa County Planning and Development Office, and are also available on the Planning and Development website 1 week prior to each hearing at www.maricopa.gov/planning. With respect to the hearing process, cases will be considered in the order they appear on the agenda unless otherwise agreed to by the board. More coming up on that in a moment. For each case, the applicant will be given a set amount of time to present their testimony. Any witness wishing to give testimony on a particular case shall notify the board of such interest. This shall be done by filling out a speaker's card, such as the one that I'm holding up. If you fill that out, obviously, if you're here in attendance, or by registering desire to comment as noticed on the published agenda if you're online. Also, at the appropriate time for each case, the chair will be asking those attending in person and online who wish to speak to a case to raise their hand by clicking on that icon on the webinar screen. Staff will provide the chair with the names of persons who have registered and noted a desire to comment, and those registered participants who have raised their hand. The chair will call on each named participant one at a time. Such testimony shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. However, the actual amount of time allowed to testify shall be at the discretion of the chair. The chair will conduct the hybrid in-person and virtual public hearing according to the bylaws and according to the rules established by the chair regarding public comment. Votes will be done by roll call vote only, and the chair will verbally identify the specific member responsible for each motion and for every second. Move on to the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes for the August 11, 2022 hearing? If there are no comments, comment?
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't here for that meeting.
Fair enough. There's no need to vote on this, so those are otherwise considered approved with the abstention noted. Move on to the announcements regarding the agenda order. Items number 3, which is BA 2022-021, which is the Crago property, and item number 5, BA 2022-033, Arizona Sand and Rock property. They will be moved to the end of the regular agenda since I have to declare a conflict of interest and recuse myself from those items. All right, we'll move on to the continuance agenda. Item number 1, BA 2022-036, the Weiss Family Trust. Turn this over to staff.
Mr. Chairman, board members, this is variances, a number of variances for properties in the Elmwood and Crimson area of Mesa. It is requested for continuous October 13th, therefore no action is necessary.
Thank you very much. As noted, there's no action required by us. We'll move on to, I think I said consent agenda, was actually a continuous agenda. Move on to the consent agenda. Number 2, BA 2022-002, the Gerhardt property. Turn this over to staff.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members, this is in District 4. It's a variance to the side east and west setbacks for property at 19211 West Selden Lane in the Waddell area, specifically in the Sonoran Ridge subdivision. It's a 3/4 acre approximate site in the Rural 43 REPD zoning district. There's no known opposition. The findings in paragraph 13 are that it meets the statutory test for variance approval. Should you motion, staff offers item A to memorialize the variance, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of staff this time? Has anyone indicated any interest? I don't have a speaker card, but anybody in the audience wish to speak on this item? David, is there anything from you and your team?
We're not aware of any speaker.
All right, go ahead and close the public forum for board discussion. If there is none, entertain a motion.
Chairman, I move that we approve case BA 2022-002.
We have a motion for approval by member Person. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by member Schwartz. Just beat you, Fawn. Go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Approved. Aye.
Member Schwartz,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson,
Aye.
Chairman Loper.
Yes.
Chairman, that's an approval by a vote of 5-0.
The approval of the consent agenda. Congratulations. Move on to the regular agenda. First item, which is item number 4, BA 2022-029 for the Richardson family. Turn this over to staff for presentation.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. Case BA 2022-029 is for the Richardson Family Limited Partnership property located in Supervisor District 1. The site is located at 14760 East Willis Road in the Gilbert area and is located in the C2 Intermediate Commercial Zoning District and is approximately 9.8 acres. The request includes a digital billboard separation distance of 328 feet from the main travel lanes of a freeway, where 300 feet is the maximum permitted per MCZO Article 1403.3.1.J.1.II. The request would accomplish the following: allow a digital billboard separation distance of 328 feet from the main travel lanes of a freeway, where 300 feet is the maximum permitted. Staff received an opposition comment letter regarding the current variance from Kyle Miras, Town of Gilbert Development Services Director, dated July 19th, 2022. The letter disputes that there are any peculiar hardships associated with the subject property or proposed billboard that would appear to justify the requested variances, and the town's land development code does not allow billboards within the town of Gilbert. I would like to remind the board that this is in a county jurisdiction parcel, and that the town of Gilbert does not have jurisdiction on this parcel. The applicant has demonstrated that there is a peculiar condition facing the property in that the existing billboard was specifically permitted as a freeway-oriented sign, and for that reason was previously granted variances for the billboard to be taller and larger for view from the freeway. There is no practical orientation for the sign to be viewed from any other roadway. The applicant has demonstrated that the strict application of the MCZO to the applicant's property has caused undue physical hardship that prevents reasonable development of the property because the existing billboard permitted as a freeway-oriented sign at a distance of 328 feet from the freeway, and subsequently the ordinance was amended to establish a 300-foot maximum separation distance from the freeway's main travel lanes. The applicant has demonstrated the peculiar condition physical hardship is not self-created in the line of the title, and the applicant has demonstrated that the general intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance will be preserved with the variance. Staff would offer the following to memorialize the variance approval. Variance approval establishes a 328-foot maximum distance from the edge of the freeway's main travel lanes to the closest edge of a billboard or its support structure for APN 304-54005Z. However, if the board finds that the applicant has not proven entitlement to the variance, then the board must state on the record the basis for that determination with findings and conclusions in the motion to deny the relief sought. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Great presentation. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
Chairperson
Go ahead,
Loper.
Member Schwartz.
So I'm just curious, we approved this in 2021. So explain to me again why we're having to see it again now.
Sure. So with this new request is for digital conversion. And so the existing billboard had been approved through the two previous variances as a freeway oriented with increasing size and height. At this point, with the digital conversion, we allow if it doesn't meet if it doesn't meet the new TA, if it doesn't if it doesn't meet the current standards from the recent TA regarding billboards, then we would consider it legal non-conforming. And then we have several. We have opened up the for legal non-conforming billboard signs for a route path to digital conversion with either a special use permit pathway or the variance pathway. The reason that we supported this variance now is because the previous variances were approved as a freeway-oriented billboard rather than any other, just a normal billboard. I hope that answers.
So, and maybe I'm a little confused here, and that wouldn't surprise me. Is this a matter of the way the text is written between a regular billboard and then because we approved it, then there's no way for it to comply for the digital piece?
No, just to be clear, you don't even have to consider the history. When this billboard was originally permitted, there wasn't a requirement to be within a certain proximity of a freeway. Today there is. And so any change requires them to come into conformance or obtain a special use permit. And so they're coming into conformance with the variance. There's a more detailed analysis in the staff report, but it requires new entitlement today because of a condition of the ordinance that didn't exist when it was originally permitted.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff?
Chairperson Loper.
Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. And is the applicant?
Chairperson Loper, I do have a
Chairman,
question.
members of the board, Gary Hayes on behalf of the applicant. For your records, my address is 2198 East Camelback. And if I could, Member Schwartz, I think you hit it right on the head. And Darren did a great job and will always do a better job of explaining this than I will. But because there was a new ordinance, we're now trying to come into compliance with that ordinance. I would like to take a moment to thank your staff, which as always, they did a great job on this. And they've done a better job in their staff report than I could do standing here telling you. But I just would like to say I'm in full agreement with staff. I'm available if you have any questions. And I would like to reserve some time because I believe Mr. Maris is on the line. So if I could reserve a little time to discuss what he may bring up. I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Hayes at this time? Seeing none, go ahead and do we have any speaker cards on this item? No speaker cards. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak? If you could raise your hand, please. No. Do we have anyone online, David?
Yes, Veronica Gonzalez is registered to speak. She's unmuted, so she should be able to speak.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on the
All
variance.
Hang on, everyone, real quick.
Chairman Loper, just to let you know, we do have one representative that would like to speak. Her name is Veronica Gonzalez with Gilbert. So she's listed to speak in opposition to this.
Is she online or in person,
I believe
Veronica?
she's online. She had registered. So
Okay.
As soon as we get David back online, we'll work that way.
So, Rachel, you can't hear us through the webinar? Okay, Veronica, hold on. We'll get this fixed.
Okay.
Matt, this is your opportunity to show us those magic tricks that you've been talking about.
Chairman Loper, since we're paused, I thought I'd just ask, can you hear me when I'm speaking?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Veronica, do you want to try speaking again? They may be
Yes,
able to hear
hello.
us now.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on the variance request for case BA 2022029. I am here on behalf of the town of Gilbert to speak in opposition to the variance request pertaining to a digital billboard. The town of Gilbert is opposed to this variance request for the following reasons. The billboard sign has already received approval of 2 variances, which you have already discussed. Approval of a 3rd variance would allow an expansion of a sign that is unable to comply with basic minimum code requirements. As noted in the town of Gilbert's earlier written response, perhaps the site is not conducive to a digital billboard if multiple variances are necessary to make it happen. The town's allowance for additional height in the vertical development overlay district, which was intended for buildings and not signs, was used to justify the increased height despite the town's prohibition on billboard signs in general. So we believe we have a responsibility to protect the surrounding property owners as well as the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. So for these reasons, the town of Gilbert asked the board to deny this request. Thank you.
I caught it to begin with, but you're Veronica Gonzalez, correct? You did say town of Gilbert. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Veronica Gonzalez, town of Gilbert.
Fantastic. David or Alicia, do we have anyone else online that you're aware of?
Chairman Loper, we're not aware of any other speakers.
Chairman Loper,
Yes.
may I ask a question of Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes, Ms. Gonzalez, you're still online?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead, Member Cardin.
Thank you. My question is, my memory is when this came up in February of 2021, that Gilbert did not oppose the request. Is that accurate according to your records?
Member Gonzalez, or I'm sorry, not Member Gonzalez. Ms. Gonzalez, did you hear the question from Member Cardin?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
He was asking if in the initial approval from February of 2021, he didn't recall, and I don't either, that there was any opposition by the town of Gilbert at that time for a non-digital billboard. And we're wondering if you're aware, did the town submit any opposition to that or any comment?
The town of Gilbert in general is opposed to billboard signs as they are a prohibited sign type within the town of Gilbert.
Okay, Member Cardin, is that sufficient?
Well, sure, I understand that, but it sounds like then there's, at least we don't have a record or a memory of whether or not anything was submitted back in February 2021.
It looks like staff's shaking their head that they don't recall that there was opposition at that time.
Yeah, and that was my memory. That I was actually surprised by that. That I remember I thought there was a comment, but it wasn't in favor or support or opposition. It was just simply we acknowledge that this is being requested. That's my memory.
Fair enough. Any other questions of Ms. Gonzalez with the town of Gilbert by any board member?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Member Brisson. That's okay.
Gary, Are you just trying to have this converted to a digital billboard? I had the impression from Ms. Gonzalez's comments that you were trying to add an additional one, but I thought you were just trying to convert the existing one to digital.
Through the chair, board member Person, that is correct. It's just a conversion like we have done. And I can step back a little bit and give you some history. And I have to preface this with, I've known Mr. Maris for many, many years. I respect Mr. Maris, but Mr. Maris and his staff had decided since the text amendment that every single billboard is going to be opposed. And we have had at P&Z, I think 4 or 5 of these, if I'm not mistaken. I think staff's agreeing with me on that one. So board member Cardin, dead on. They didn't oppose it in 2021. It is just since this text amendment. And I'll also place in context, I have echo, which is throwing me off a little bit, but I don't know how many of you are familiar with this area, the 202, but the property that is highlighted there is owned by the same people who own Santan Ford, which is part of the auto mall. If you go 300 feet to the east, there's a very large sign for the auto mall. If you go a mile to the west, there's even a larger sign for Chandler's Auto Mall, which is nothing in comparison to the sign that we're talking about here today. And it's important to note, and I'm not sure how much the board went through the text amendment. I know you guys talked about it, but P&Z got 85 different meetings about it. As staff noted in their staff report, a digital billboard is actually better for the surrounding community because you're able to limit the lights. Instead of just having like a downlit or uplit board, you have a lights with louvers. The county board of supervisors put in place louver technology that will limit the light that comes away from these boards. This is actually an upgrade to what we have today. And this has got a lot of interesting issues with it, with the construction of the freeway and everything's going on. So unfortunately, I think that Gilbert is just opposed to all billboards. I have an analogy, and I probably shouldn't say it in public, but I will. It's analogous to the Board of Supervisors in Maricopa County saying, no more car washes. We don't think car washes should be an allowed use because there's a drought, so no more car washes. And then the County Board of Supervisors, when Darren or Rachel down to the town of Gilbert and say, hey guys, you're gonna do a car wash. We don't think you should. And the town of Gilbert's gonna say, well, in the county, you can't do a car wash. We're not in the county. And that's the same issue we have here today. You can't do a billboard in Gilbert. We're not trying to do one. That's
Thank
all
you.
I have. I'm sorry, board member Sonia, I took your question and kind of ran with it, so.
No worries.
Any other questions of the applicant or of the town of Gilbert person? Member Cardin or Ward, any questions of the applicant or the speaker? All right, we have no other speakers, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. I did have a question of staff, and maybe it was for the applicant as well. I'm aware of the distance requirement that the county has for digital from the freeway. The 2 parcels that are to the south of the highlighted parcel, are those ADOT parcels?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so really it's kind of an existing condition, the parcel configuration kind of out of their control. Okay, thank you very much. Over to the board for discussion and or a motion.
Chairman Lober,
Member Cardin?
I agree with staff's analysis and would move that we approve BA 2022029 per the conditions enumerated by, or at least one condition enumerated by staff.
Thank you. I have a motion for approval by Member Cardin and a second by Member Person. Rosalie, would you please take a roll call vote?
Member Cardin,
Aye.
Member Schwartz,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson,
Aye.
Chairman Loper.
Aye.
Chairman, that's an approval.
Ayes
A
above the
vote of
nose.
5-0.
Congratulations. All right, move on to the next item on the regular agenda. Item number 6, BA 2022-038. I'll just go with BA 2022-038 because I'm going to butcher that name. Go ahead and turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. Case BA 2022-038 is for the Palukton property, which includes a request to obtain a variance for a proposed single-family residence. The request is to reduce the south side yard setback to 20 feet, where 30 feet is the minimum permitted per MCZO Article 503.4.2. Next slide, please. The subject site is zoned rural 43 and located in the Rio Verde planning area, about a third of a mile north of Rio Verde Drive and quarter mile west of 160th Street. In most respects, subject parcel is emblematic of the surrounding area. It is approximately 1 acre and is currently vacant with desert terrain and vegetation, with a floodway running through the north half of the parcel. The adjacent parcels to the east and west each have a single family residence, whereas the adjacent parcels to the north and south are vacant. Nonetheless, each of these parcels is zoned to rural 43 as well. Next slide, please. This excerpt from the grading plan shows the proposed dwelling with the original 30-foot setback to the south. It also shows the dwelling separated by the floodway retaining wall by as little as 4 feet. Since this was drawn, however, the applicant's engineer wrote a memorandum advising that the house would impose additional forces on the wall that would not be there if the house were a further distance from the wall. If the wall were to fail, it would cause catastrophic damage to the house. Therefore, the engineer recommended that the distance between the wall and the house be increased. Heeding the engineer's recommendation would have the effect of reducing the setback between the house and the southern property line to 20 feet, hence the applicant's request for a variance. Next slide, please. And these next 3 slides show the bird's eye images taken of the subject parcel looking east, south, west, and north respectively. Staff notes there has been public comment received on the variance request, with 1 in opposition, citing concerns with the impact of the home on the flow of water onto the surrounding properties. The letter of opposition is attached within the staff report. Based upon what the applicant has submitted and the staff analysis, staff finds that the request meets the statutory test for variance approval. The applicant has demonstrated that there is a peculiar condition facing the property and that the location of a wash running through the northern half of the property establishes a unique topographical challenge to the construction of a single-family dwelling, thereby pushing the practical building envelope southward. The applicant has demonstrated that applying the requirements of the MCZO to this property that has this peculiar condition creates an undue physical hardship that prevents the development of the property. If the proposed dwelling were to observe the minimum setback requirement of 30 feet and thus be further north, it would be located too close to the wash such that, should the retaining wall fail, the house would be destroyed in the event the wash floods. The applicant has demonstrated the peculiar condition physical hardship is not self-created in the line of title. The applicant has demonstrated that the general intent and purpose of the MCZO will be preserved despite the variance, because the variance would allow for the sustainable development of a residential use on a rural 43 property, which, owing to the peculiar condition on the property, would otherwise not be practical without the variance. And further, if the board finds the applicant has satisfied the statutory test and agrees with these findings or states its findings on the record, the grant of this variance will memorialize the following. Item A, variance approval establishes a 20-foot south setback line for APN 219-37099C. However, if the board finds that any aspect of the statutory test has not been proven, the board must state on the record the basis for that determination in a motion to deny the relief sought. At this time, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, and welcome to the Board of Adjustment. I think this is your first case in front of us.
Yes, thank you.
Did a great job, in the immortal words of Bruce Willis in that Christmas classic, Die Hard. Welcome to the party, pal.
Thank you so much.
Is there any questions of staff by any of the board members? All right, seeing none, go ahead and open the public hearing. Is the applicant available? Come on up, please, and give your name for the record and go ahead with your presentation.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Andrei Poloktin. Address is 9974 East Acacia Drive, Scottsdale. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present justification for this variance. Next slide, please. There are 2 major issues with this that I'm going to highlight: the safety and sustainability. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a beautiful area, and the lot itself is located in really rural. It's a beautiful area located North Scottsdale. It's a nice area, but it might be really challenging to develop. Next slide, please. Now let's skip this one, go to the next. Just I want to save a little bit of time. Okay, as we can see, there is a one wash going on the northern lot. And then it splits and goes to the other lot. And then there is another wash going right through the middle of our lot. And this one, believe it or not, it becomes a river once in a while. The water flow there is 170 square feet, which is a lot. Next slide, please. So we highlight the wash area. We can clearly see that, oh, no, go a little bit back. We can clearly see 170 square feet coming from the western side, and then another 36 feet from the northern side. And then we highlight the area, we can see that half of the lot basically is not suitable for the building. There is not much we can do with it. Next slide, please. This one a little bit technical, so that's a 2D flow, beautiful tool, shows you the water flow and well, direction and the flow. The blue ones and light blue basically means very little flow. The dark color, quite a lot of flow. And the southern portion of the lot is more or less dry. That's the condition we have to deal with. Next slide, please. The best plan we came up with this condition. The red one is a retaining wall, and you see the green light over there is foundation of the house. And in some places, the wall is about 10 feet. The particular problem there, if we try to move the lot, the retaining wall a little bit north, it starts affecting the northern lot. The flow tends to push to the northern flow, to the northern lot, and it tends to change the exit point. And that's basically something that we cannot afford because the lot on the east side was developed based on the particular entrance point of the floor. So if we push the wall a little bit north, it starts changing the flow and it changes the exit point, entrance point for the next lot. So we're kind of stuck and there is not much we can do about it. It was done by fairly experienced civil engineer, Cameron McDonald. He did probably hundreds of projects in this area, so he's pretty good at that. And then if we take a look at the cross-check section, so it clearly shows us a huge retaining wall, anywhere from like 4 to 5 feet distance between the house and the foundation, and then the foundation itself. When I look at that, I wasn't really happy. The county wasn't really happy with this plan, and the major concern everybody had is safety. So what happens if retaining wall fails? Next slide, please. Yeah, there are two: safety, and another issue is whenever we put this wall, it tends to change the nature of channels, and it might change the flow and exit points. I'm going to highlight some of them. Next one, please. So we looked for the second opinion from a geothermal engineer because I wasn't happy, county wasn't happy. His conclusion was that the wall is stable enough. However, the wall imposes additional force on the wall that otherwise wouldn't be there. If we don't go through details in just the highlight area, where the wall to fail due unforeseen technical conditions, it would be catastrophic. So speaking plain English, it means that the house will be at least partially collapsing, not entirely, because distance is 4 feet. It's a 10 feet retaining wall. If it starts falling, that's going to be kind of disaster. Up next slide. Oh, no. Okay. Whatever we do design, we usually win. And most of the time, civil engineers do whatever they need, and it lasts for a very long time and nothing happens. But once in a while, we fail. There could be multiple reasons for that. We could underestimate the shear force of the nature, and with the recent increase in monsoons, strength with the monsoons, there is a reasonable assumption that the flow might increase from 170 to probably 200 square feet per minute at some points. And we saw quite a few fairly strong monsoons recently. There could be error in calculations, there could be wrong assumptions, and there could be some error or some mistakes during construction. So there are plenty of things that can go wrong. So we're trying to move away the house from the wash. So in case the wash fails, nothing's going to happen to the house. Next slide, please. Okay, water channels. If we take a look at the nature of water channels, it's going to be kind of V-shape. What we're trying to build here is going to be like a V-shape on one side and retaining wall on the other side. And there is a great chance that when the flow increases, it will overflow on the northern part when there is like shallow area, and it might change the channels. So basically, if it changes the channel, first it might move to the northern lot, and the secondary it might change the exit points and the entrance point on the next lot. So if we're given this 10 feet, the variance will be able to design the riprap, and the riprap that kind of resembles the water channels, natural water channels that's been there for like probably thousands of years. And next to it, the retaining wall that's probably not going to affect the flow too much. Next slide, please. I will take a look at the Maricopa County, well, the zoning ordinance, among many other things, and encourages safe and sustainable development. Next slide, please. In terms of safety, so that's what we're trying to address. 10 feet variance will provide us buffer between the wall and the house. So basically, either reducing or completely eliminating any potential damage to the house. So in case if a retaining wall fails, it will need to repair only on the retaining wall, and nothing's going to happen to the house. And in terms of sustainability, if we have 10 more feet, we'll have way less disturbance to the natural water channel and leaving them as is right now, basically. Next slide, please. And as a conclusion, the code provision clearly promotes sensible and sustainable development of residential property. 10 feet variance in a site is not in conflict with the purpose of applicable code provision. And finally, without the variance is requested, safe and sustainable residential use cannot be simply achieved here. Thank you very much for your attention, and any questions?
Thank you very much. An extremely thorough and well thought out presentation. Are there any questions of the applicant? Member Schwartz. Oh, questions of staff. Go ahead and hang tight. We may have some more questions for you. Go ahead, Member Schwartz. Go ahead with your question. Yeah. So.
Correct.
Chairman Loper, I can't hear Member Schwartz. Maybe his mic isn't on?
Oh, there you go. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
So assuming we approve this, has that design been approved through staff, subject to the variance?
Mr. Chairman, Member Schwartz, there is a pending construction permit. I believe it is awaiting the variance.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not contemplating doing something that hasn't gone through this exercise first to make sure it works.
I don't believe we have we do not have an approved initial permit that, but it has been undergone technical review, and he was quoting review comments.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions of applicant or staff by any board members? Seeing none, this is a public hearing which I opened prior to the applicant speaking. I don't have any speaker request cards. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this particular item? Seeing none, David, Alicia, is there anyone online who wishes to speak?
We're not aware of any online speakers.
All right, going once, going twice. Go ahead and close the public hearing. I'll turn this over to board members for discussion and or a motion.
I have one more question I forgot to ask staff. Sorry.
Go right ahead, Member Schwartz.
The material that's on the site, are you aware of that material? Is that natural material? Was it brought in? Was it approved to be brought in? Or maybe it's the applicant?
We got approval, but the county wasn't happy, and they say that the provisional approval, we get the second opinion. So we got the permits and everything, but we decided not to pursue this way because of the safety concern.
Okay, so is the property in compliance or in non-compliance because of that fill that's sitting on the site?
I believe there is currently an open violation case on the property regarding the stockpiling of dirt. It was opened, I believe, in April 2021 prior to There had been a building permit issued in March 2022. However, a modification was submitted just a few days afterwards, and that modification is currently in plan review. However, the violation is still open for the stockpiling of the dirt on the property for the grading without the prior issued permit.
So, Mr. Chairman, Member Schwartz, if they get this permit issued and complete, that will remedy the violation. Because the permit for the residence and the retaining wall will include all the site work for the site. It seems pretty obvious that the dirt was imported prematurely, and that's what's being used to build up the fill pad.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Schwartz. Anyone else have any questions?
Chairperson Loper?
Yes, Member Cardin.
Not a question, just a comment. I noticed there was a letter of opposition to this. Apparently they're not here to speak, but I guess I only note it for the record so that they can feel like they've been heard. I've read the letter.
Thank you. Good to note that. Appreciate that, Member Cardin. That was the only opposition was received, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. All right, entertain a motion if anyone has one.
I move to approve case BA 2022038B because it meets the statutory test for variance.
We have a motion for approval by Member Schwartz. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Member Ward. Rosalie, if you please do a roll call vote.
Member Cardin?
Yes.
Member Schwartz?
Yes.
Member Ward?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson?
Yes.
Chairman Loper?
Yes.
Chairman, that's an approval by a vote of 5-0.
Congratulations. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is BA 2022-039, the Tomich property. Apologize if I screw up a name again. All right, go ahead, staff.
Good morning, Chairman Loper and members of the board. Agenda item number 7 is for subject case BA 2022-039, which is a variance request for the property located at 39611 North 2nd Street in the Anthem area in Supervisory District 3. Approving this request would have the effect of allowing for a 23-foot, 10-inch front setback where 40 is required per MCZO 503.4.1.1. The applicant is requesting this variance to allow for the permitting of an as-built garage addition. The varying of the front setback would also affect an existing 10-by-16 shed to the east of the garage addition, which also does not meet the required front setback standard. Next slide, please. The lot was created as part of a parcel split in 2002 and is a corner lot of standard size and configuration to adjacent parcels. As the shortest of the two sides with access, East Saguaro Road to the south is at the front of the parcel with a required 40-foot front setback. It should be noted that despite Saguaro Road being the front of the parcel, that the driveways from the house and garage go to 2nd Street rather than Saguaro Road, and that the front of Saguaro Road is fenced off with no means of access to the parcel. The home itself was built in 2002, the detached garage addition having been permitted and built in 2008, the same year in which the current owner took possession of the parcel via warranty deed. The as-built garage addition was subsequently built in 2012 without the benefit of a permit. The 10-by-16 shed is under 200 square feet and would be allowed without a permit, but it would still be subject to zoning ordinance requirements, including required setbacks for detached accessory structures. Next slide, please. It is staff's conclusion that this project does not meet the statutory requirement for a variance, as there is no peculiar condition or unnecessary hardship that would not allow for the construction on the lot to comply with the ordinance. The lot is of a standard size and configuration to adjacent parcels. The buildable area created by the existing lot setbacks does not appear to be encumbered by hillside or flooding issues. As evident by the existence of the sheds directly east of the garage, it would be possible to expand the garage to the east and move the 10-by-16 shed to be compliant with the ordinance. Finally, staff did receive 4 letters of support with 7 signatures total from neighbors of the property owner indicating overall support for the project, and neither engineering nor environmental service staff had any comments on the variance request. Thank you, and at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Landis. Good presentation. Sorry I didn't acknowledge you earlier. Are there any questions of staff from any of the board members? I do. Go ahead, Member Schwartz, and then I have a question.
That's a great picture, but can you take the map on our report that map and show me where that is on the parcel photo, the aerial. Where that garage facing is.
Yeah, so the garage addition is,
All right, now okay, thank you very much, Chairman Roper. I see it now. It's hard to see on there.
yeah, it's colored white, so it's kind of difficult to see from the aerials.
Welcome, Member Schwartz. Question for staff. If the front of I understand why the front is actually the south side of the property off of Saguaro, but if the front were legally the 2nd Street, the west, would they need these variances because they were detached accessory structures in the side or rear yard?
Chairman Loper, we did explore the option of having a non-vehicular access easement along the south of the parcel. The issue with that would be that the front of the house on the west would now be less than the 40 feet required by the zoning ordinance.
So variance either way for something. All right, thank you very much. Any other questions of staff? This is a public hearing. Is the applicant or applicant's representative here to speak?
Yes.
Please provide your name for the record and go ahead. Thank you.
First of all, good morning, Mr. Chairman and the board. Does this work? Okay, because I couldn't hear it from back. Say that again. Okay.
I'm sorry, there used to be a way to raise this, but.
Okay, I'll bend over. That's fine. I am the owner and occupant of 39611 North 2nd Street. So I've been there about 18 years now. And to correct the record, you had that occupied in 2008. I actually moved in 2004. Next slide. And as already been pointed out, the garage addition, I don't think laser pointers work here, but yeah, the garage addition, as we said, is on the south side. And the issue is exactly as the chairman pointed out. We use 2nd Street as the front of our property, not the south side, and I'll show you why. Next slide. Okay, there's the addition again, just another view of it. And it's there for a reason. That is the view from the west. And next slide. That's the shed in question. It actually encroaches in the 40-foot area by 2 feet. It has approximately a 38-foot setback. I wasn't aware of these setbacks when I built both the addition and the shed, because it seemed reasonable to me. This was the side of the lot, didn't need to be that far back from Swirl Street. Next slide. Okay, a little bit of history of how we got to this point. First of all, I want to tell the board that there was no intention to violate any ordinances, and there's no intention to cover up any said violations. Originally, I built this as an open air area to store car parts. I like to restore old cars. And the reason I did that was to be a good neighbor so that my neighbors didn't have to look at a bunch of rusty old car parts sitting out in the open. So I built a fence around it and a gate. However, that proved inadequate due to dust and dirt and rain and was destroying the parts. So I added a roof under the false assumption that a carport open at both ends would be okay. I was given bad advice on that. And so that's what I did. And that's why the ends aren't closed. Now I found out later that I should have gotten a permit. And shortly after that, I also was informed that the lot square footage had been increased, so I could get a permit. So I applied for a permit. I initiate the as-built process out of good faith and to make it right. And I'm still trying to make it right. I've been working on this for a year and a half, and it's been frustrating and it's been expensive. Next slide. I know that the money I spend isn't any concern to the board, but I do want to point out that I am retired. I lived on basically Social Security and a military retirement. And so this is a good amount of money to me. When I started the permitting process, I started with getting a building permit. I spent $874 in fees to find out that, oh no, you need a variance. Okay, so I spent another $385 to get in fees to get the variance. And then I found out that my poor drawings weren't up to adequate, so I had to hire an architect and that make nice drawings for the county. That was another $600. Then I was told that, well, we need an engineer to back up these drawings. So I hired an engineer. That was $650. And then I have the original as-built construction cost, which had been $7,000. And since I am 74 years old and I have a bad back, if we do have to demolish this, I'm going to have to hire someone to do it. And how about that's going to cost, I don't know. And the cost to move the shed. I can't move that thing on my own. It's pretty heavy. Okay, next slide. Okay, justification of why I would like to reduce it to 23.10 feet. First of all, as we already discussed, the south easement is not used for entry or egress from the property. In fact, the south entrance cannot be used for egress or ingress from the property, and I'm going to show you why. The west end easement is the one that's used for entry and egress from the property, and everybody in the neighborhood uses the west, which is 2nd Street, for ingress and egress. The reduction in easement will allow reclaiming lost space due to the setback to the west, which allows for ingress and egress. The reduction in the setback does not create any safety problems, any access problems, or neighborhood appearance issues. And there are no other options available, and I will explain that in rebutting the 3 findings. Also, there's a Maricopa planning and development precedence, and it's very close. The neighbors have no objections, and of course, there's the personal financial loss, not approved. Next slide. This has been shown before, so basically it's showing the original survey and how the lot was divided. I think that's already been covered. That is 2nd Street, but please note that everybody exits and enters their property from 2nd Street. Next slide. Okay, that's my house, just re-emphasizing my garage entry is from the west. My circle drive entry to the front door is also from the west. And I would like to point out too that I'm not trying to build junk here and make a neighborhood nuisance. I'm trying to keep my property clean and well maintained. Next slide. Okay. You can see I think we've established where the addition is. Next slide. I want to talk about Saguaro Street. Saguaro Street, that view is from the southwest towards the east, and that's the access to the next cul-de-sac. You can see it's lined on both sides by a fence. It would be hard you'd have to knock down the fence in order to enter from the south. And there's another reason. Notice right about the middle of the road, about halfway down, there's water stains. The reason those water stains are there is because when it rains, we get about a foot of water crosses that road. Next slide. And here's why. I have a natural drainage that drains my backyard and the neighbor's yards on the back side of the garage, and they come down to this collection pond. And also from the left side, there's another drainage from the front of the garage that goes to this collection pond. And once the pond fills up, then it crosses the road. And like I said, at times, it fills it up all the way to the edge of the rocks, and sometimes more than that. Next slide. The issue of lost space is in the front. You can see I got a large area there that I cannot use because of the setback from the front, since it's being used as access. And my understanding was that was supposed to be 40 feet. And then, but we talked about the BNA issue. Thank you very much, Joel. Okay, next slide. Okay, one of the main points I want to make is the setback reduction does not obstruct Saguaro Street in any way. It's been this way since this housing development was built. There's no restrictions to people getting back to their lots. And in fact, if you look at the left picture, as seen from the east, you can't even see the addition because it's obscured by the fence and the trees, and you can just barely see the top of my shed. Next slide. Okay, as has been already been pointed out, the applicant failed to demonstrate that there's a particular condition facing the property because the lot is of a standard size and configuration and is from the same lot split. Okay, my rebuttal is, I'm sorry, last item. He says the lot is not encumbered by either a hillside or flood issues. I disagree. There are flooding issues. There are a number of natural drainages on the property that required enhancement to prevent flooding. The main residence foundation is over 2 to 3 feet above ground level on the south end to prevent flooding. The garage is surrounded by 2 drainages, and there's no alternative course for those drainages. Next slide. This is the back side of the garage. You can see that bridge that you're looking at is 8 feet across. So give you some idea of the scale of this drainage, and it's about 1.5 to 2 feet below the bridge. And when it rains, it fills up. And I might point out too that to the left, you can't divert to the left because to the left, that ground is so soft that when it rains, the mud comes up to your knees if you try to walk across it. Next slide. This is the front of the garage, and you can see the drainage, all the water that comes off the roof through the gutters of my house, drain through the front side of the garage and overflow that driveway and then go down to the pond. Next slide. Second finding, the applicant has failed to demonstrate that the strict application of the whatever that is to the applicant's property has caused undue physical hardship and prevents the development of the property. There are alternatives available on the property, such as rebuilding the garage addition on the east side of the garage to be compliant with the existing setbacks. Thus, variance is not warranted. I've already demonstrated we have a natural drainage on the back side of the garage. My rebuttal, as the previous slide shows, the garage is surrounded by natural drainages. The east side is definitely not an option due to flooding. The garage is where it is because the builder moved it as far away as he could from the east drainage. And the north side of my parcel is not an option because that's where the septic field is. The west side is not an option because that's how we get in and out of our property. And the backyard is not an option because during storms, that same drainage fills to overflowing at times. Next slide. And there's a picture during a storm. There's that drainage. As you can see, the water is moving quite rapidly through there. There's rapids. The water has overflowed the banks and has gone back all the way to my neighbor's back fence. And also note that I had to terrace my backyard in order to stay on high ground so that I wouldn't get flooded out during rainstorms. Next slide. Finding 3, the applicant has failed to demonstrate the particular condition or hardship was not self-created in the line of title, and that the garage addition was originally built without a permit and the garage itself does not access the front of the parcel. Here we get back into that issue of what's the front. I don't consider the side the front, but the county considers the front the side. So I don't know what to do about that. But anyway, the garage addition access to the west of the parcel is there for a reason. All the structures that on the parcel access to the west, 2nd Street, and 2nd Street is the access for the entire cul-de-sac. The applicant concedes that the garage was built without a permit due to ignorance of the codes. And I'm not going to argue that, but I'm trying to make this right. And I'm doing it in good faith. Next slide. Okay, there's a precedence. Maricopa County Planning and Development that allowed an addition. Whoops. I hope you haven't lost this part. Okay, the property that I'm questioning is directly across the street within a stone's throw. And is a mirror, the property is a mirror image of my own parcel. And the addition that was allowed is only 27 feet from the south or east Laurel Road. And all I'm asking is that I be given the same consideration. Next slide. Here's the satellite view. On the right, you can see my addition. On the left, you see my neighbor's addition. In fact, if you took that picture and folded it in half, my addition would overlap his addition. The one on the left's been approved, the one on the right is not. Next slide. Here's a picture of that addition. That's my neighbor's house. By the way, I contacted my neighbor and asked him about this. He's actually the second owner. This addition was built by the first owner, who was a contractor. And the present owner says all of this was included in all the plans that he was given when he purchased the house. So it has been vetted by the title process. You can see the allowed addition on the left side is quite tall and close to the Saguaro Road. Next slide. Here's a picture peeking over the neighbor's fence, which is okay. We're good friends. There's the allowed addition on the right. There's the wall for Saguaro Road. And there's only, by my estimation, 27 feet between the structure and the road. Next slide. So the issue again, one's been approved, and so far mine has not been approved. Next slide. Neighbors have no objection. I got the signatures from everybody on my cul-de-sac and everybody but two people on the people that live on the next cul-de-sac that use the Saguaro. The two that I did not get, I was unable to because they travel a lot and they weren't home. So next slide. So in summary, I'm acting in good faith. I'm not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. I just want to make it right. The garage addition does not pose any safety issues or obstruct travel on Saguaro Road or 2nd Street. The addition does not restrict access to or egress in any way. The addition does not detract from the appearance of the neighborhood. There is no other practical location for the garage addition. The neighbors don't object. The precedence has been set by approval of a structure across the street, and disapproval would cause some financial loss. Thanks for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very detailed and thought out presentation, and also thank you for your service. Questions of the applicant? Member Schwartz.
First, I want to again thank you for your service. What branch?
Air Force. I'm retired at Luke as a F-16 pilot, and then flew 23 years at Southwest Airlines.
Oh, good for you. Thank you very much. Stay there though, because I might have some questions. I have some questions for you. Can you go to the back of his aerial photo of his house, please? No, the other one that's that is part of our exhibit. You had it before. The next one. Nope. Well, yes. Let's go to that one. So, can you? I know it's hard from where you're at, and there's no pointer. North is where the so it's a satellite view. Correct, is the top.
Yep.
Okay. So the drainage areas. Is there a drainage around the north side of the house?
No. On the north side of the house, the property just north of me is the high point. There's kind of a slight hill. He's the high point. Where the drainage is coming from are the properties on Second Way, the next two properties. Both of those houses drain through the corner, if you will. There's four lots there.
Mm-hmm.
That house and this house drain towards my house.
Okay.
And that drainage I've been showing pictures of runs right through my backyard. You notice I don't have a pool because the pool would get washed away. And it all comes down and then crosses Saguaro Road right to the south of the shop.
So, okay. So your house couldn't have been set back any further to the east because of the drainage from the neighbor's property.
That's, well, yes, correct.
I'm making an assumption.
Yes.
Without verifying any engineering.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, to be honest, I wasn't involved with exactly how far the house was set back. That was the builder that did that. But as I found out right after I moved in, before we had landscaping in, that boy, we got a creek here that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Question to staff. Can you tell us a little bit about the property across the street and have information about when it was permitted, how it was permitted? Did they go through a variance?
Member Schwartz, the garage on the neighboring lot was built with a permit in 2004. I did not find any variance in my research of that parcel. I assume that it was built in compliance with the ordinance at that time. I don't want to speculate as to why, but it does appear, and I think in my, just on the assessor's map, kind of measuring that setback, it would be within that front setback. But again, I don't want to speculate, and it does appear to have been built with a permit.
To clarify, are you saying that it meets a 40-foot setback from 2nd Street?
It's 40 feet from Saguaro Road to the south.
But not the accessory structure?
So the accessory structure that I am referring to is the detached garage on the south side. I believe that the house itself, if I measured off the edge of that garage, I believe it is actually slightly under at 37 feet, if I remember correctly, but that's only using the accessory website. It's not without seeing an actual plan of the sites.
So, Mr. Chairman, board member, I don't have knowledge of the permitting of that lot, but the question is, did they add a vehicular non-access easement along the south to establish 2nd Street as the front? And if the single-family residence met a 40-foot front setback, I can't determine that. I don't think it does. I don't know if it's permitted, if the accessory structure is permitted or not. I don't know.
All right, thank you. Any other members have any questions of the applicant? All right, go ahead and hang tight. You may have something else. The only speaker request card I have is from you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this agenda item? Alicia or David, is there anyone online?
We're not aware of any speakers.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it over to board members for discussion and or a motion. Member Schwartz, go ahead.
So this is one of the cases that I struggle with because, and I know from other board members here, we all have a lot of real estate background and we're always trying to solve problems, but we only have so much latitude in which to comply with. And it's extremely sympathetic. Like, I mean, I think that in retrospect, when they would design that house, they should have looked at that front yard setback and the conditions that occurred with that flooding in the rear yard to get that variance, or to make for the front yard to be on 2nd Street and not Saguaro. So I'm struggling with how I apply the justifications, because I don't, I think that in retrospect that it would have been permitted differently, and they may have gotten a variance back then with that wash and that water going through the backyard. So I'm interested to hear what everybody else has to say regarding this, because I'm still struggling with how it applies to the requirements of the special use permit. Excuse me.
Thank you, Member Schwartz. Any other members person?
Question for staff. Why can't the building be considered an accessory use? And can you remind me what the setbacks would be under that scenario?
Member Person, the building would be considered an accessory use as it's detached from the primary structure. Accessory structure setbacks are per 1106.2 of the zoning ordinance, which allows for either a 3 or 5 foot setback from in this case would be the east or north of the parcel, 3 feet if fire protection is used, 5 feet if not. But the front setback of 40 feet from the front would still apply. That would apply to any structure, primary or accessory.
Thank you.
And as a corollary to that, that would be, it would be accessory structures, and they would probably be okay if the front of their home was the west, 2nd Street, correct?
Irrespective of the primary structure that's existing, yes, it would be in that location, it would be permissible.
But in that instance, as you mentioned previously, the front setback of 40 feet, they likely wouldn't meet that. I saw 30 something on the site.
That's correct.
Any other board members have any comments?
Chairman Loper. Thank you. First of all, I got to say, Mr. Tomich did an amazing job with the presentation. I'd consider, I'm a little tongue in cheek, but hiring him if I ever needed a variance. I mean, very thorough. So well done. I appreciate what Member Schwartz is expressing. I think I've been on this board long enough that everyone kind of knows I have a certain approach to these and to these variance requests. And truthfully, I look at this and say, I'd be willing to approve it, recognizing, as Mr. Tomich explained, that there are some flood issues. Now, there may be others who don't see it as clearly, but excuse me, but that's one that would be a basis for my approval.
Member Cardin, was that in the form of a motion or just comment?
That was a comment. I didn't want to assume to make a motion in a Supervisor District 3 area.
All right, thank you. Any other board members have any comments? Member Person?
Yeah, I can feel comfortable with the peculiar condition of the address and front street assignments. And I understand that that would mean that potentially the front of the main house would not be compliant, but I don't think that's subject to this variance. And I think they would have a peculiar condition with the drainage there. So this is in my district. I move that we approve case BA 2022-039, subject to the conditions outlined in your staff report.
We have a motion for approval by Member Person. Is there a second? Second by Member Schwartz. Rosalie, would you please take the roll call vote?
Member Cardin?
Yes.
Member Schwartz?
Yes.
Member Ward?
Yes.
Vice Chair Person?
Yes.
Chairman Loper?
Yes.
Chairman, that's an approval by a vote of 5-0.
Congratulations. Move on to the next item on the agenda, TU 2022-010 Neighborhood Market. Turn this over to Rachel, I believe, for a presentation.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Loper and members of the board. TU 2022-010 is a temporary use permit for a neighborhood market. Next slide, please. The temporary use permit application references Waddell Farms Market and or Waddell Swap Shop on a rural 43 zone property with existing residential use and does not appear to be utilized for farming. The site consists of 1.22 acres located in Waddell. Next slide, please. The owner is requesting 3 event dates to allow neighbors to bring their own pop-up tents to participate by selling, exchanging arts, crafts, books, and homemade food. The events will include approximately 50 to 75 people as single-day events from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on October 15th, November 19th, and March 11, 2023. The events would be held on site within the front, rear, and side yards. A limited number of parking spaces would be located in the front yard to accommodate 8 spaces. All other parking would be off-site. There's an existing code violation from 2021 due to events being held on site without obtaining a temporary use permit or special use permit. Next slide, please. Access to the site would be from Glendale Avenue and 171st Drive, which is a private ingress-egress easement utilized by 6 rural residential lots and the general store located directly to the north of the site. The owner has verbally stated that no parking would be allowed within the ingress-egress easement, and a sign would be placed within the easement to eliminate vehicles from traveling further south beyond the event parcel. The events would include 2 parking attendants to monitor and direct vehicles to not go beyond the event location. The slide shown right now, north is to the left. I just enlarged this image so you could visually see the neighborhood. Next slide, please. Offsite parking would be located at the general store, which is at the southwest corner, and the leased space for the burrito barn at the southeast corner of Glendale Avenue and 171st Drive. The owner has coordinated with owners of the adjacent commercial sites and obtained authorization for offsite parking. The general store only has direct access via the private ingress-egress easement off 171st Drive due to a canal located along the southern half of Glendale Avenue right-of-way, which you can see the image shown below or on the screen is looking to the southwest of the site. The general store has split zoning of C3 and Rural 43, which shows access to the property from 171st Drive and unmarked parking stalls. The site would need a rezone to C3 with possibly a commercial unit plan and development to amend the zoning district standards with the plan and development to develop the site. Next slide, please. The secondary off-site parking location is at the Burrito Barn at the southeast corner. The site is currently subject to a code violation for food truck, large storage tank, setup of permanent awning without permits clearances. This parcel does not have driveway access from 171st easement. Parking would be required directly from Glendale Avenue to access the site. Next slide, please. Code Compliance inspected the event in 2021 and photographed food trucks and an increased number of visitors to the property. Another inspection was made this year with notation of about 30 to 40 vendors for each event. The violation case was scheduled for a hearing officer hearing back on May 31st, and the owner was found responsible and advised to obtain a temporary use permit for the upcoming event. Next slide, please. Staff is concerned with social media posts made by the owner that previous events included up to 700 people, along with the listing of 55 vendors. The application also does not account for setup or breakdown of the events, so staff has evaluated the setup and breakdown to be within the 9 to 1 o'clock timeframe as requested. Staff has included a condition to limit the event to 75 people, which includes vendors and visitors. There is opposition from the neighbors that reside along 171st Drive. The opposition has stated this would be the 4th event to be held, with increasing number of vendors and attendees growing as these occur. Issues raised include the location, size of the parcel, intensity of the use, which is not appropriate for a farmer's market. Social media posts and photographs were also provided by the opposition referencing the 700 attendees and 55 vendors. Other concerns raised include advertising the event with food trucks. The location is on a narrow dirt road, which results in increased dust, traffic, noise, and concern if there's an emergency getting services to any of the residential properties that reside along the easement. The neighborhood market started in 2021. The use of the farmers market for large assemblage of people requires a special use permit to accommodate the use on site and to have parking contained within the parcel. The current configuration of using off-site parcels for parking and driveway access has resulted in a direct impact to the existing rural neighborhood. The intensity of the use, number of vendors and attendees, roadway access, parking, dust, and noise directly impacts this area. Staff is willing to support 2 additional limited scale size events with the temporary use permit due to written authorization received from the adjacent property owners for off-site parking, but are concerned that the number of people and vendors were not clearly identified with this application. Upon review of the code violation from 2021 and 2022, the photographs and opposition documents show utilization of food trucks and excessive number of people attending. Staff believes this use exceeds the intensity of a small-scale neighborhood market. The applicant has been advised going forward, this type of use requires a special use permit, triggering the need to have the site accommodate all on-site parking. The owner has indicated verbally that she is not interested in filing for a special use permit. The owner was advised that staff would not support the March 11th event and that the special use permit would need to be filed to host these events. Staff believes this type of use would be better accommodated at a site that can handle traffic, noise, and parking. These type of events are typically held at a community park or large commercial retail shopping center that are designed to accommodate this type of event. If the board decides to include the March 11, 2023 event, staff notes that condition C would need to be amended to include that event date. Staff recommends approval of the 2 upcoming event dates in October and November to limit the maximum number of vendors to 75 people, consistent with the temporary use permit application filed. The violation case has been open and active since 2001, and the owner could have filed for a special use permit. Staff recommends the board recommend approval of temporary use permit TU 2022-010, subject to conditions A through Q as listed in paragraph 12 of the staff report. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Rachel. Very thorough report. Any questions of staff? Member Person.
Thank you, Rachel. So just to make sure I'm clear, you're recommending approval for these 2 upcoming events, but nothing beyond that, and suggesting that if the applicant wants to do other events that are larger, they need to apply for a special use permit.
Chairman Loper, Member Person, that is correct. We're only recommending approval of the last 2 for this year.
Thank you.
Chairman Loper?
Member Cardin.
Yes, Ms. Applegate, I'm just curious, with the conditions that you showed in the staff report, do we know if the applicant has agreed that these conditions would work for them? Because they sound like they're pretty limited compared to what has happened in the past.
Well, that, Chairman Loper, Member Cardin, that's an excellent question. I believe the applicant was attempting to possibly change the date. She was wanting to do an event every quarter going forward. I notified her that that's not possible with this application because the written documentation was specifically for 3 dates. Long-term use, the county is indicating to her that she needs a special use permit going forward.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? I'm sorry, of staff at this time?
I have a question,
Seeing none,
please.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry, Member Ward?
I do have a question.
Yes, go
Thank
ahead.
you. Rachel, I have a question for you again. Can you explain to me, as a novice, with the problems of ingress and egress, emergency vehicles, everything else, how was it justified for the 2 remaining to be approved, suggested approval? Or why?
Sure. Chairman Loper, Member Ward, we had evaluated it because the application came in as small scale. And so in order to accommodate the owner to host some events, we decided to go ahead and limit that to the maximum of 75. And so the condition identifies that. I believe it's condition C with the approval. We are concerned about the number of people in the social media post indicating that the events are much larger in scale. The other concern is all traffic that comes to this event that park at the general store are required to use this easement because Glendale Avenue has an existing canal along the southern portion of the right-of-way. So all traffic has to be filtered through this easement, which is a direct impact to the neighborhood that for the existing 6 residential lots that reside on this segment of ingress egress.
Thank you.
Member Schwartz has a question. Go right ahead.
So Rachel, how do we monitor whether they're in compliance with C of the recommendations?
Chairman Loper, Member Schwartz, that would actually require code enforcement to go out there and count people while it's occurring. And we know the dates and we can send somebody out. But it's a very difficult enforcement if we can't get the property owner to make people leave once they're there.
Is it possible to add a stipulation that they hire off-duty police that will limit the 75?
You can add conditions like that to temporary use permit.
Wayne's saying.
Wayne's shaking his head.
Mr. Chairman, Member Schwartz, a police officer would not have the legal authority to tell somebody they can't come in because there are too many of you. He wouldn't enforce our condition that way. He could, for instance, say you can't enter because there's nowhere to park or something like that. But just to say there's 74 people there, you 2 would make it 76.
But
I was looking at it a different angle though, but I appreciate what you're saying.
But council and members, we routinely the board even has requirements for temporary events to talk about security. The police officer will be acting as security for the site, would not be acting as police.
That's what I meant exactly. And I apologize, Wayne. What I meant was that they would be directly contracted with the owner. The owner would tell them it's 75. And then that way it's measurable. So we don't have to feel like it's being, we know it's being monitored and policed internally by the owner as a safety measure. What I don't want to do is give somebody the rope and then we want them to succeed, not fail, but then think that they can just open it up and there's nobody there to watch them.
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Schwartz, Member Schwartz, to follow up on that, if code enforcement documents a violation, they will attempt to notify the operator at the time, but it would be an after the fact enforcement where we would have a verified violation. We'd document photographs and we would call them in for another violation hearing. The issue there, they would face a financial penalty as an incentive not to continue with zoning violations. But code enforcement would not halt an ongoing event. It had no authority to do so.
Any other questions of staff at this time?
I have one more, please.
Oh, Member Ward, yes, apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Chairman and staff. Did you say that there were existing, I'm sorry, have there already been violations of exceeding quotas on this market? And did you also say that the applicant was not interested in pursuing a special use permit?
Chairman Loper, Member Ward, they never received an entitlement for the events. So there was never a limitation or maximum number of people attending. This has been kind of a word by mouth social notification that goes out within the neighborhood. So there's really been no specific number that's been tied to this parcel. They never received the proper entitlement.
Thank you.
If I could add on to that, so just having the activity, the event itself is a zoning violation until they obtain some type of temporary use permit approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? Member Schwartz.
So really, this is, you're handing them I can't think of the right phrase I want to use, but basically an offering to say, we want to keep you going, but we want to find you the way to keep you in compliance or get you into a manner that allows you compliance to move your business forward, correct?
Mr. Chairman, Member Schwartz, I would agree. Rachel's tried to communicate to the applicant, you have a zoning violation. We'll give you this limited ability to continue with some of this activity, but this is not your solution. Long term, you need there's another solution.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from any board member? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is the applicant or the representative here to speak to this? Are they online?
Hello, this is Corey Burt. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for hearing us out. First of all, I just want to say we live in a pocket of heaven. So we have 1.25 acres of all just pasture, green grass, and behind us is 30 acres of pasture. So it's a little pocket of something special out where we are in Waddell, and it's all there's no HOA. It's county land. Most of the people here raise livestock, goats, all different kinds of things, cows, all kinds of things. And during COVID, so many people were saying, how can we get together? What can we do? We can be outside. How can we be safe? Those kind of things. So in the slide that you're seeing there, these are some of the people. The woman on the bottom right, it's a widow. She makes these plants to, keep her busy and her, mental state good. Above that 2-5 farm, they raise goats. They sell their goat's milk. The Mighty Change of Heart, a friend of mine, runs this nonprofit for foster children. basically just collecting money or items to fill these little duffel bags for foster kids throughout the entire state. And they, you know, emboss them and just do amazing things. The younger girl on the bottom left makes her own honey, you know, well, bees do it, we know better, but she does that to fundraise. We have probably on the next slide, there's another girl that raises bunnies. You know, we have people doing 4-H projects, those kind of things. The horses, little mini horses, are women that run a volunteer organization that work with little children with special needs, disabilities, those kind of things, and they bring these horses to them or let the kids come work with them, and it brings them joy. The little girl that's raising her hand, she sells water, and she's my next door neighbor. They love having a market at her house. So, and there's a woman up right, she does handmade rag quilts. You can see the girl with the bunny, she raises those for 4-H. We have a special little neck of the woods, and everyone in our neighborhood has talked about wanting to do something like this. From the very beginning, I have wanted to be in compliance. I'm a rule maker, I'm a rule keeper. I will do the things, but the problem was we had COVID and there was no one to talk to. I couldn't show up. I mean, I drove downtown twice. You know, my own daughter-in-law is a Maricopa County health inspector. So I've asked her the questions. You know, she had different ideas about what permits and things we needed to do. And so from the get-go, I want to comply. The other special thing, and you saw in one of the other slides, or it might be in one of the next ones, is we live next door to this cute little country store, and there's parking there all day long. So you can see a little drive-through in one of the slides that was there, where people were parked for one of our markets. People drive through that to pick up and drop off hay, to, you know, shop at the country store. Some of the neighbors, probably the ones that are opposing this, are the ones that don't like it. But it is what it is. We live in the country, we live on a dirt road, we have dirt, and there are warehouses being built across the street, across Cotton, which have made some people out here kind of grumpy because we're used to our farmland that's lovely. But I'm trying to make the most of it, and I don't do it to make money. I only charge vendors $50 so that I can pay for the restrooms and the parking attendants to make sure that the neighbors at the end of my street are happy. This is done literally for goodwill and to build community. So I'll follow any instructions you give me as long as I know what they are. I just haven't known what we need to do. And I've wanted to share my land and share our beauty and the special little town we live in the most compliant way. So we literally could only do 2 a year to make everyone super happy that is in my neighborhood that wants to do it. And I would be happy to do that if I could find it in a way where I'm not just bleeding money to do it, because I don't make any money to do it. So I mean, if I need to do a special use permit, if we need to do whatever, we'll do it. Even the people at the burrito barn and the Out West General Store, we all get along very well. They've given me permission to have anyone park there that people do anyway. And I've even offered to use some of the money that the vendors have paid to help pave or, you know, drop aggregate on their parking so that there's no dust. I've offered to pay for a dirt, you know, the water truck that will put water there. The guy that owns Burrito Barn is willing to do that. Everyone's working together for this. If you'll please just show me how to do it, please, then I will do it. I don't know what's on the next slide. I just, and this isn't, I'm not in business to do markets. I'm in business I'm just trying to be a good neighbor. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Any other comments from the applicant at this time?
Not really. I mean,
Bert, we may have, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, you know, if you can give me any instructions, I would love it.
I do have a question for you. Did you review the stipulations proposed by staff, and do you agree with those?
Well, I don't know how to do it because, you know, the thing is the ingress and egress, no one takes a vehicle down that road. Okay, so we're the first people on our street and there's 5 other houses past us. Okay, so people parking would park where they do every day at the businesses next door. So if you see at the top of that picture, the top right there, I mean, that's a picture of my husband took that drone picture at the busiest part of one of the markets that we did. And if you look at the top right, you've got a little portion of what's the burrito barn, but there's also 9 acres to the right, on the right, that's a big long strip that people could park there as well, owned by the same gentleman, Hal Swagel. And he would allow us to park anywhere we're allowed to. So, and the problem is people just walk in. They're not, it's not a matter of that they're going to be driving vehicles down there, right? They park away and they walk over. So limiting the number of people who would walk into my own backyard is kind of, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'm having a big party, you know, which people do out here all the time. Let me just say, the mariachis go on like crazy all night long. So people do big events out here because we have a lot of land, but there is literally not a residence within acreage of me that has complained. I mean, our next door neighbor is the chief of the fire department, I believe in Goodyear, and that's his daughter, oh, and Buckeye, and that's his daughter selling the water. I mean, they love it. We all help each other. So people walking into my backyard through my front yard, you know, that's all that's really happening.
All right, thank you very much. Rachel, Darren, in terms of the stipulations, there would be the opportunity, if this were approved in some form, there'd be the opportunity for you to discuss the implementation and enforcement of those stipulations and kind of work through those as they pertain to a specific issue she may have with them, correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes. I feel it must be said, though, that it sounds like the offered conditions do not work for the property owner. And I need to go on record that this is an inappropriate site for large-scale public assembly of people. It's on a dead-end dirt road. The places where they're parking are grass and dirt and unpaved surfaces. There's a lot of work before a special use permit that involves off-site shared parking would even be ready. If the applicant does not think very limited 2 more events are doable, then I would suggest they find other sites to host their events and that this temporary use permit be withdrawn or denied.
Thank you. And a question back to the applicant. Is that kind of what you're saying, that the stipulations placed on this at this time would make it difficult for you to operate even on the 2 dates as proposed by staff?
Well, in reality, we're really only going to be doing the October 15th one because we want to be good neighbors. And if this is, you know, bothering my neighbor down the street, who is the one I believe that's in opposition because he's in opposition to the store and other things that are just not in his control. But I'm happy to follow guidelines. We're looking to only do this October 15th event with this permit. And then going further, we would probably only want to do 2 a year, 1 in March, 1 in October. But if we can't do it at my property, someone will open up their property because this is just, it's country. Everyone's like, this is horse property. This is irrigated acreage, you know, and these people love it. So we're going to find a place to do it. But if it's, you know, all I'm asking for today is please let us just do this one on October 15th. We'll do our best to comply with what needs to happen, and we'll figure out whether we need to do a new location or a special use permit for any others.
All right, thank you. Yeah, a question of staff. If the board were to approve 1 or 2 events, would they be able to come back for another temporary use permit to do 1 or 2 in 2023 and 1 or 2 in 2024? You know, the 2 events a year, it kind of indefinitely under the TUP.
Mr. Chairman, they can seek that type of application, but staff would view this as ongoing special events would not be supported.
Thank you. Other questions of the applicant, member Person.
I actually have a question for staff. Rachel, do you know, I thought you said there were several opposition letters. Are they from the broader area or people on the street, or could you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Chairman Loper, member Person, the opposition is actually located on the street directly to the south. They are within 170 to 130, or excuse me, 340 feet. So they're directly impacted. They reside on 171st Drive. So these are the property owners that submitted opposition to the temporary use permit applications, and they've been noticing the ongoing events going on.
And more than one then?
Two. We have two registered.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I know member Schwartz, you have questions or comments?
Well, I think more comments. So let's just get the public testimony over and then I can comment. Thank you.
Okay. At this point, any questions or comments from member Ward or member Cardin? All right, seeing the shaking heads, no. I've opened the public hearing. Is there anyone, I don't have any speaker cards, but are there any in-person persons who wish to speak on this item? Not seeing anybody raise their hand. Alicia or David, do we have anybody online who wishes to speak?
There was a comment that was posted by Pearl from an online in the chat, but otherwise there are no other speakers.
All right, thank you very much. Go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it over to board members for comments and or discussion and or a motion. Member Schwartz.
Yeah, just more of a comment that we all love the setting, assembling these types of events. But with that, there becomes a responsibility not from just the people that are doing it, meaning the organizers of it, but from the county by setting up a set of standards for the safety and well-being of the people that go there. And there's many events with have organizers that understand what has to be done and they have the ability to execute that. I don't think that's the case here. I think the applicant has done a wonderful job in bringing her community together, but they're not set up for this. This isn't the right setting for it. And I don't believe that she could find a way to comply with the recommendations that staff has put together. I think staff has done a great job in giving her that olive leaf is the word I was looking for earlier to help her succeed, but she really isn't set up to do this. I commend her for her valiant efforts. And I think that with some help, she could find the proper location and the tools in which to execute this to meet our requirements. So she could have an ongoing, sustainable swap meet, farmer's market, whatever you like to call it. So I will not be supporting this, but I hope her all the best success in the future if she continues to find another place to go.
Thank you, member Schwartz. Member Person.
I'm dealing with this in my neighborhood, although I don't live on a lot of land, but I can certainly empathize. I love the idea of having community events, but I think they need to be managed in a way that doesn't create problems for the surrounding neighborhood. And it concerns me that the applicant doesn't feel that she's able to comply with the stipulations. So if we had more time, I would probably be recommending a continuance so those could be ironed out in more detail. I'm personally willing to support for this one event, but I'm not interested in having this continue to come before the board. And I appreciate staff's suggestion that, if it's an ongoing thing, let's do what we can to help Ms. Burt and her group find a different location or pursue a special use permit with the appropriate stipulations.
Chairman Loper.
Member Cardin, go right ahead.
I'll tell you, so I'm right in line with Member Schwartz and even what Mr. Gerard expressed earlier. From what I heard, the applicant feels she is unable to go along with the recommendations of staff, even on that one event. And I'm just imagining, even if I was a neighbor there, or this was happening in my neighborhood, it just, I can appreciate that there might be those who would be concerned with kind of the larger group that seems to have come in the past and sounds like would likely come again. And so I just wanted to express that opinion, that's where I feel like I'm aligning right now.
Thank you, Member Cardin. Member Ward, any comment?
I concur with everybody. It would be the same thing. We love these events in Laveen. We're always looking for ways to make them happen, but we need to take the neighbors into consideration as well, regardless of, we need to take the neighborhood into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ward. Member Schwartz, another comment?
So, Member Person, how would you envision if we let them, if we gave them one more event, they still wouldn't be able to comply with those stipulations, and so would still be a health and considered, Wayne's looking at me funny, a health and safety risk, because they don't, there's things in these stipulations about water and parking and number of people that they probably wouldn't be able to comply with.
I don't know if a discussion between or a debate on enforcement of stuff that's really not the board's is necessarily appropriate. I'm kind of looking for Wayne for guidance. Okay.
Okay. It's a great question, and I should clarify. So I'm willing to support this one event so that they can have an appropriate opportunity to transition instead of canceling what they're doing, but they need to comply with the stipulations. So, and I am a little, concerned that they don't understand them. So I don't really know what to do. I would like them to be able to have this one event, but yes, they need to have trash services and they need to be monitoring and not have the 700 people or, so my vote would be conditioned on those stipulations being enforced. Does that help clarify?
Yeah, Member Schwartz, go ahead. Yeah, put your mic on, please.
Yes, Corey, can you hear me okay?
Ms. Bird, if you could please unmute your microphone.
Okay, I was muted by the meeting. Sorry.
This is Member Schwartz.
Yes.
My question to you is, if we approve one event through October 15th,
yes,
and will you comply with the stipulations as outlined in the recommendations from staff? It's a simple yes or a no.
Yes.
All right, thank you. My comments on this is it looks to me like it's kind of become a victim of its own success. Like has been said here, I applaud the efforts to bring the community together. Got some great vendors here and some great representatives of the local community that are doing really good work. And I love to see these things, but in the appropriate location. I think in my own area, I remember there was a vacant pad at a commercial center and a food truck was there, and the food truck was there for about a month on the weekends. And then the food truck was there daily. And then suddenly there are several food trucks, and it quickly exponentially grew to something that interfered with the operation of that particular place. And that was a commercial center. And I think that's somewhat what's happened here. It's just become extremely successful. With that said, and with Ms. Burt's last confirmation that she could comply, I do support the temporary use permit with limiting it to one event, and let's see how that goes. There would be time, would there be time if she was successful and would demonstrate to come in for that second event, or that's kind of getting too tight, isn't it?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's very tight because if you approve it subject to the one event, we have to repost, 10-day posting period. I expect more opposition. We'd have to come back to the BOA.
Right.
That means it would be back here in October in order to make a November date.
Okay, well, with that said, thank you very much, Sharon. I would be supportive of the two events because, again, she's confirmed that she would try to comply. It would be nice to be able to let the neighbors know that there is a sunset to this event. And at the same time, it seems like there's a lot of inertia, momentum, if you will, that has kind of brought at least some of this forward. And Ms. Burt just can't emphasize enough the need to comply with the staff stipulations. We may find out that after the event or events, depending on how this goes, that it worked out well, and even the neighbors were able to concede that they were no longer opposed to it. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. With that,
Chairman Loper?
Yes, Mr. Member Cardin.
I'll just, it sounded like you may have been close to making a motion. I just wanted to throw out there, with her last statement that she would comply, do all she could to comply. I can also be supportive. I also heard her say that she was really focused on just the October 15th date. And so I wonder if that's all we work towards, is just the one.
That's a fair question. Ms. Burt, do you just need the October date?
Yes, that's the only one we can focus on and that we need to, and then I'll follow any instructions for anything further.
All right, thank you very much for clarifying that. I do have a question by Member Schwartz for staff. Go ahead.
Darren and Rachel, how long does it take to get a permit from MCESD for food concessions?
Mr. Chairman, that's not going to be, I don't believe that's going to be site specific. It's going to be food handler permits. And so the vendor should already have those items in place before they come to the site. But I would really need to defer to environmental services for that.
Okay.
If they were permitting something on site, like commercial kitchens, I mean, that becomes very significant. It's a commercial construction permitting issue as well.
So after I asked the question, I went back and looked at some of the stipulations. And so that's what triggered me to ask the question. Is there things in here that are beyond her control, that she may have vendors coming out here that may not be able to comply, and she's going to be putting herself in a situation of being in non-compliance when they show up and having to potentially either turn somebody away or not be able to enforce that. And then we come out there as a county to have our compliance officer out there to find that she's in non-compliance. I don't want to find her in non-compliance. I want her to succeed. And so I'm struggling with even the single event, although I want to help her. So.
And Mr. Chairman, I believe, Commissioner Schwartz, that Public Health and Environmental Services has, we have a reactive policing of zoning complaints. They are a more proactive agency because it's health related, and they have officers that will go and check events and check for food handler permits and things like that. A zoning code officer, if it's memorialized in the SIP, has the ability to could see that, but really what we would be doing is making sure they're not parking on unpaid, unsurfaced site, the number of people, that type of activity.
All right, any other questions of staff or the applicant? If not, I'm ready to entertain a motion. I think this is in District 4, which is my district. So I will offer a motion for approval of the temporary use permit TU 2022-010, subject to the stipulations outlined in the staff report for the one event on October, what's that date? October 15th. I see a comment from Mr. Peck.
If you would extend your motion to deny.
Okay, and part of my motion would be to deny the other 2 dates as requested by the applicant, so it's just limited to October 15th, 2022. It's a motion. I'll entertain a second, and then we can go into discussion.
I'd like to make a second, but I'd like to amend the motion. If you would include that they hire an off-duty police officer to monitor the 75 people.
Yeah, let's get a second and let's take discussion for that. So is that a second for the motion?
That's a second, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion by me and a second by member Schwartz. Discussion, you'd like a friendly amendment to add a condition about an off-duty police officer. There was mention that there is a parking attendant that utilizes or is utilized for parking. You know what, I'll make the friendly amendment to the motion that it include an additional stipulation that an off-duty police officer be hired to help with traffic control and any other needs.
Second, fine, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion, modified motion, and a second. Any discussion? All right, Rosalie, if you'd please take a roll call vote.
Member Cardin,
Yes.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Member Ward,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson,
Yes.
Chairman Loper.
Yes. Thank you.
Chairman, that's an approval by a vote of 5-0.
Good luck, Corey. We're cheering you on.
It is noon. Does anybody need a break at all? Are we good to go to roll? So we've still got quite a few. Looks like we're ready to roll. All right, next item on the agenda is TU 2022-035, Mi Hacienda Temporary Events, Temporary Use Permit. Turns over to Mr. Johnson for presentation.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the board. Case TU 2022-035 is for the Mi Hacienda Temporary Events in Supervisor District 5. The site is located at 7644 South 27th Avenue in the Levine area in the Rural 43 zoning district and is approximately just shy of 5 acres. The site is adjacent to a similar use. The Corona Ranch Rodeo and Event Center is located to the northwest and west of the subject site. And Mi Hacienda, the subject site, is improved with a primary residence, several agricultural structures, pole barns, and corrals, along with a lighted arena. Access would be provided by 27th Avenue, and this right-of-way is under the jurisdiction of the City of Phoenix. The City of Phoenix has provided no comment, and no further permits are required for use of 27th Avenue to access the property. The property contains enough parking for roughly 150 vehicles as provided by the applicant. The request is for 30 special event days over a 6-month period. Temporary events, some scheduled during weekends lasting no longer than 48 hours, scheduled from September of this year through April of next year. The staff report does have a grid of schedule of anticipated dates that they plan to have these events. The event times are anticipated to be held between 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. on Fridays, 5 p.m. to 12 a.m. on Saturdays, and 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Sundays. Arena lighting is to be extinguished promptly at 10 p.m. Portable lighting will be used to illuminate guest areas and parking areas while guests remain on property up until the last guest leaves. The site can accommodate 150 vehicles on site, and guests will have access to the following structures and areas. The parking area, the event gathering areas with adjacent bar, corral and arena, and ADA compliant portable restrooms. The request would accomplish the following: allow temporary events to be held on site while a special use permit is being pursued by the property owner's agent. A special use permit has been filed and is awaiting revised site plans in order to be scheduled for the next Planning and Zoning Commission date in the future. Applicant has complied with the public participation process as required by the special use permit. The property owner intends to bring all of the structures into compliance for the purpose of running an event venue business for various family style events. Staff received one letter of opposition from an adjacent property owner to the south with concerns of safety, traffic, noise, waste, and disturbances to livestock nearby, typical of rural living. Because of opposition had been received at the time of public posting for this application, this application was required to be held at the Board of Adjustment, this Board of Adjustment. If opposition had not been received, the application would have been administratively approved after the 10 calendar day post public notice period. At this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Great job again. A question for you, the opposition, who authored that, if it's known?
And
that's
that is
okay.
from Ms. Maria Silva.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Go ahead, member.
Daniel, I thought that you said there were 30 events they were asking for, but I see a lot more on this proposed event dates. It's something in the 50s. So I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly.
Right. It's request for 30 special event days over a 6-month period. And
that is correct, Mr. Chairman, Member Person. They've identified a bunch of dates and they're going to take 30 within that identified list.
Understood. Thank you.
And a follow-up to that, you mentioned they've submitted for a special use permit. If they got that, if they were successful in receiving that, that would negate the need for the temporary use permit.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of staff at this time by any members? Nothing from Member Ward. Member Ward, go ahead.
Yes, please. I'm not sure if this is staff or I should wait for the applicant, but I have a lot of concerns being familiar with the area, knowing the location that's right next door is also primarily a weekend. It is primarily a weekend venue. Entry, egress, lighting, noise, dust, parking. This is, I'd like to hear from nothing from staff, but well, wait a minute, has this been discussed? Staff, has this been discussed with you?
Member Ward, yes, the applicant has discussed the mitigation for, at least in the application as well, mitigation efforts in regards to those concerns brought up by the opposition. Parking would be on site. City of Phoenix did not have any further requirements for using 27th Avenue to access the site. Portable lighting will be provided to illuminate the guest areas, and then the arena lighting will be promptly shut off at 10 p.m. What other concerns did you have, Ms.?
I'm picturing them both having basically the same type of business outlook. And so if one is having a wedding and one is having a rodeo, I'm seeing where this is going to hurt both businesses. Noise especially. Is there a way to negate noise pollution between these two?
Mr. Chamber Member Ward, we've actually, the applicant and the representative is here and can probably address that, but the same issues affect the existing operation and this proposed operation. They're going to have to learn to coordinate. That issue does exist whether or not they're hosting a rodeo event or just practicing cutting on their own property. Although, of course, obviously the people make more noise. But if there's two competing wedding events, the same thing may apply to different degrees. But they understand they're going to have to coordinate with the neighbors to make them both as successful as possible. If not, there's going to be conflicts and complaints from customers, but that's beyond our control.
Thank you.
If any other questions, Member Ward or Member Cardin? Just a follow up to that. The adjacent use is Corona Ranch, correct? Are they operating under a special use permit or zoning? Okay, thank you. All right, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is the applicant or applicant's representative available?
Yes. Chairman Loper, we would be happy to first speak afterwards.
Okay. All right, I do have a card from Maria Silva. Ms. Silva,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Rod Jarvis. I'm representing the applicant remotely. Brian Vaccaro, our planner, is there in person. I do have a presentation ready, but I would, given the fact that you also have a number of cases yet to go, you've already been into this quite a bit. Staff made a very good presentation. Perhaps, Mr. Chairman, I could simply answer that one question asked by Member Ward and then reserve some rebuttal time and maybe use my presentation as necessary. Would that be all right, Mr. Chairman?
That would be fine with me, and I'm seeing nods from others here as well. Ms. Silva, who's opposed to this, has come up to the podium, so I'm going to go ahead and let her speak. And then, Mr. Jarvis, if you wouldn't mind, then you can do a rebuttal to her comments as well as address the ones from Member
That
Ward.
would be fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Ms. Silva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. So the posted special use permit, which I have, is Z2022077. And the address to which they are saying that this refers to is 17644 South 27th Avenue. That's 22 miles away from where this is posted. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I would have you discuss that with staff.
Okay.
The purpose of the posting and the notice is to make sure that you're aware of what's happening, and clearly you are from your presence here and from your emails to staff. But they can look into that and make sure it's corrected.
Okay. And as Member Ward said, Corona Ranch, that's up right behind this other venue that they want, and it is extremely loud when they have events. I mean, it rattles our windows. We used to grow beef behind our acreage in the back because it's cheaper to grow your own beef rather than go out and buy it, and it's better quality. Well, when they have fireworks and these kinds of events, I mean, these animals are scattering everywhere. They're jumping over the fence. They're hurting themselves. It's awful. It's just awful. And then sometimes the MC or the DJs, when they talk between the music that they're going to be playing, sometimes you hear the most vile and filthy language coming from those events that it's sickening. We've had parties at our house that we've had to move in-house so that our children don't have to listen to that. And it's very disheartening. When they say they have parking, is that parking inside the gated area or where is it?
It would be inside.
It's not going to be parked on the street? Okay, because our concern is there was an event some time ago and they did park on the property across the street, and which they did not have permission to have their patrons park there. And there was a lot of trash left that we had to clean up or we get cited. So, we don't want it there in any way, shape, or form. And having Corona Ranch and this other venue, it's the same thing. It's very, very loud. It's very disturbing. We don't have peaceful enjoyment of our house when these things occur. And there have been times when, party ends at midnight, party ends at 1 o'clock, 2, 3 o'clock. They're still going at it, the loud music. I call the sheriff's department. They say, well, there's really nothing we can do about it. And we call and call and call. And the sheriff's department, again, well, there's nothing we can do about it. So 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, we're still awake because the music is ongoing, the events are ongoing, and there's total disregard for any of its neighbors. And we are strongly opposed to that.
Ms. Silva,
Yes.
not to cut you off, but the Corona Ranch operation is not the one that's under our purview right now.
I understand, but it's like Corona Ranch.
I understand that as well. If you could keep them limited
Okay.
to try to, what your concerns are with the proposed use.
Okay.
But before you go further, I do want to turn to staff real quick. The things she's talking about with the existing special use permit for Corona Ranch, should she speak to you further? You may be able to address them. I don't want to get too far in the weeds because it's not what we're discussing really, but I want her to know that there's some avenue or not that she could address these.
Mr. Chairman, complaints can always be made, and we can investigate to see if there's violations of the zoning ordinance based upon the conditions of special use permit approval, or forward those complaints to other agencies. So not necessarily all of what she said may be something that is a problem, is a violation. It is an existing entitled operation.
Right.
And neighbors have to live with it as long as it operates within the parameters of its approval. I do believe it is not a permanent zoning entitlement, and someday that operation may be terminated, or it may, or they may seek a different zoning entitlement for a permanent operation. And I know this isn't the question, but I will say when I started here, there was a zoning violation called Corona Ranch, and it was a big deal, and it kind of grew into a community landmark, and there seems to be a lot of support for it. That's the same type of thing that may or may not happen with Mi Hacienda, but the neighborhood is evolving, and it does present conflicts sometimes between semi-rural and the more entertainment venues, you know.
Thank you very much, Darren. So Ms. Silva, the same email address that you sent to for Daniel, I'd encourage you for your issues with Corona Ranch to reach out to him on that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
And then go ahead and continue with your comments regarding this proposed temporary use permit.
My other question is there going to be any liquor sold?
Ma'am, they haven't been formally recognized yet. If you would just.
I'm just wondering if there's going to be any liquor sold. Is there going to be, you know, are they going to obtain the license, I hope, or if they say, no, we're not going to sell liquor, but telling patrons you can bring your own liquor, I would be interested in knowing that as well.
Okay, definitely understood.
And I think
fair question.
That's about it.
All right, thank you very much. May have some questions of you. Again, are there questions right now of the speaker? Go ahead, Member Schwartz.
Thank you for coming. Where do you live in proximity in that map?
We live less than half a mile away from Mi Hacienda, about a quarter mile.
South, north, east, west?
South.
South. Okay. And what's the notice? You're within the notice area, correct?
Yeah, I took a picture of the notice and it said, had a different address.
Just post it.
Mr. Chairman, for the temporary use permit, Commissioner Schwartz, Member Schwartz, sorry, there's only a site posting for a temporary use permit. There is since the special use permit, separate venue, it's a legislative action. There's a much bigger public notice component, and it includes a first-class mail to property owners of record within a 300-foot radius, larger site postings, and then a legal ad in the general circulation paper.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Have you haven't had an opportunity to meet the applicant and sit down and talk to them about what your concerns are?
No.
Okay.
And you know, what's discussed, what they tell me, and what really happens could also be totally different. They can agree to, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that, but then at the time that maybe an event takes place, well, you know, it wasn't feasible, or it was not within our control to do anything about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I always like to try to keep communication open and give everybody the benefit of the doubt that when you look them in the eyes and they tell you something, that they're going to follow through. And if they don't, shame on them. There'll be recourse that way. So I'd encourage you, I mean, I don't know where this is all going, but I'd encourage you that there's ongoing operations there. It's always nice to talk to people and let them know if they decide to give you lip service, I'm sorry. But I would hope that everybody would, you know, in their ongoing, you know, being good neighbors, we all want to succeed together.
Right.
And I know that at least Mr. Jarvis's office has been here a long time and worked out with a lot of community members. So I'd encourage you, you know, after the meeting, regardless of how this goes, to reach out to your neighbor and talk to them about what's going on there, because I think communication solves a lot of problems.
Okay, I appreciate that.
No, but, and thank you for coming today and expressing. It's really important.
Right. My final comment is we just don't want another venue like Corona Ranch and the noise pollution. It's terrible. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. I open it up as such. Is there any other opposition in person here today out in the audience? Or not necessarily opposition, but anyone else who wants to speak on this item? If not, turning to David and Alicia, is there anyone online who wishes to speak on this item?
We're not aware of any others.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Mr. Jarvis for rebuttal and or the other representatives in the audience today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that very much. And we do appreciate our neighbor coming and expressing her concerns. And they are real concerns and they need to be addressed. And the good news is they will be addressed. And it's not going to be just something we say to the county and then that's ignored later on. And let me explain a couple things. As the chairman has already pointed out, the complaints about sound are directed at Corona Ranch. And as board member Ward has pointed out, the existence of Corona Ranch needs to be taken into account as we are evaluating this particular TUP request. Actually, I would suggest through the chair, member Ward, that the location next to Corona Ranch is actually cuts in favor of this request much more than it cuts against it. And the reason for that is, as you have heard, there is an existing impact. That is the place to put a business like this rather than creating a new kind of center for this activity elsewhere. Now, having said that, what we've heard described by the speaker, in my view, and of course, that will be up to staff to look into, but based upon what we're hearing from the speaker, the overloud sound impacts, the foul language, the staying beyond the time, these may well be enforceable matters for the staff to consider. Just because you have an SUP does not mean you have the right to conduct a public nuisance, and we are well aware of that. The sound impacts from our site will not impact the speaker. And the reason, and furthermore, they won't even impact Corona Ranch. And the reason for that is those speakers are going to be on our west border facing east, away from Corona Ranch. They will be blocked by the way that the speakers are oriented and by our existing structures. So they will not impact to the south. What's important to understand is we are, as has been pointed out, in the process of seeking an SUP. That's because our business has been in operation for 2 years without an SUP. And it was brought to our client's attention by a complaint, which was made by Corona Ranch, by the way. The competitors brought the complaint to the county. The county noticed my client, and we applied for an SUP. It's taken a long time to process that because of the effects of the pandemic upon the available engineering services. Those of you in the real estate business know this. And this is not a large project, and so it's hard to get engineer time. That's been lagging on, and so therefore staff indicated that we'd have to get a TUP for the time being while the SUP is being considered. My point in all of that history is to show you that by what the speaker said, she has not been hearing us. And the reason she hasn't been hearing us is precisely what I've said. The way the speakers are oriented, the way the buildings are oriented, the way we run the business at Mi Hacienda, we are not creating the impacts that the speaker was complaining about. Those are coming from Corona Ranch. Now, we do need to get legal. We do need to get that SUP. I'm not suggesting that we don't. I'm simply suggesting that because we have some history, you all can see that the sound impacts are not coming from us and they aren't going to come from us. And these sound impacts are going to be discussed again when we go through the SUP process. The question is today, can we have a TUP while we are going through that SUP process? And I think given that we've had this history where the complaints are not coming about us, but about Corona Ranch, and because of the way that we are oriented and built, I think it's clear we're not having an impact on the neighbor, and we're not going to impact Corona Ranch. The reason Corona Ranch filed a complaint about us is they have an SUP and we don't, and we're a competitor, and they wanted to put us through our hoops. And so that's what we're doing. I can go through a lot more about the site plan, there was a question raised about parking. Yes, the parking is all on site. We have parking on site for about 150 vehicles. We have 3 lots for them. That will take place first on the grass covered lots and then on a gravel covered lot. And all of those lots will be watered. There will be no dust. There will be no parking on the street. And furthermore, there will be people on site who will be monitoring that parking. That will be on-site security. Every event will have at least one on-site security who's also doing parking. If the event has 100 people, there will be 2 such people on site. If the event has 200 people or more, there will be 3 such people on site. We've indicated Friday and Saturday and Sunday night. I should just note for the record, we have changed that. It will be Saturday and Sunday nights only, not on Friday night. And we're happy to stipulate to that. I think I've addressed the questions raised, and unless the board desires it, I will not go into the full presentation, given the time you've already spent on this hearing today and the time you have yet to spend. I'd be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Thank you, Mr. Jarvis, and thank you for the consideration of not having to watch another presentation. But with that said, any board member have any questions of Mr. Jarvis at this time? Member Ward, do you have any?
I have a question of staff.
Go right ahead.
Can you tell me if there are any previous violations on this property? And I should know that. I should have.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Member Ward, this is Darren. I don't have the detailed information in front of me, but we have had violations for events held in the past, and we've had violations for unpermitted construction. There is some background history in the staff report that speaks to that to a certain extent.
Thank you, Darren. Member Ward, does that answer your question? See, yes.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman and Member Ward, if I may, Mr. Chairman, it is precisely to resolve those violations is why we're going through the SUP process, and we will bring all as-built into compliance as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. Any other questions of the applicant or the neighbor who has opposition from any of the board members? All right, and again, we don't have any additional people who wish to speak on this item. So go ahead and close the public hearing and turn this over to board members for discussion and or motion.
I make a motion to approve the case TU 2022035 with conditions. And I'd just like to add to that, Mr. Jarvis, in the process that you go through, if you wouldn't mind meeting with Maria Silva and her husband and go through what your plans are in the future, it would be greatly appreciated. I know they would appreciate it, and certainly we would too.
Mr. Chairman, Member Schwartz, does that motion include revising condition F to delete reference to Fridays?
Yes, thank you I have that written down, so sorry. And that includes revising that only events occur on Friday and Saturday night. I'm sorry, Saturday and Sunday, apologize.
I would like to second.
Member Ward?
I'd like to second, mainly for discussion. This is in my supervisory district, and I disagree. I'm sorry. I think that it being so close to the other location that it already exists, that we're opening it up for, it's not fair to the neighborhood. It's not fair to anybody. Noise travels in an open area regardless of how the speakers are set up. As you can hear, as Ms. Silva, like I said, I also live in an open area. When my neighbors have mariachi parties, they can be a mile away and we can hear them. I love it. I'm not complaining about that at all. But noise travels. It's a busy, there's dust, the livestock. So my second is for discussion, and I am opposed.
Thank you. So we do have a motion for approval by Member Schwartz and a second by Member Ward, and then we're open for discussion. Anybody else have any comments? I would echo real quick Member Ward's comments and concerns with this. Refresh my memory, what's the first dates they're seeking for approval for the temporary use permit? Coming up this weekend, looks like.
September 17th. It's a Friday, then.
Saturday. I was thinking of possibly doing a continuance to allow for more discussion, especially with Member Ward and with the neighbor. But that looks like that cuts out about 5 or 6 dates before that could happen. I'll go ahead and call for the question. And Rosalie, if you wouldn't mind doing a roll call vote. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Member Schwartz.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Member Ward, I understand your concerns here, and my recommendation for approval takes that into consideration. What I perceive as a real solving of the problem is that they're working through getting a formal SUP completed. This allows them to continue, but we're going to have this discussion again in April. They can only operate until April according to the special use permit, correct?
This is a temporary use permit. Yes, they apply, and if they were to receive a special use permit, that would negate the temporary use permit, and then whatever time stipulation or is put on that would then apply. It could be the same dates, could be past this. That would be its own process. It doesn't come before us.
That's my point is that this is all going to come to another discussion with us, because this is just temporary when they apply for the SU for a permanent SU.
That doesn't come back to the Board of Adjustment. That goes to Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors.
So, Mr. Chairman, just like the previous temporary use case, if they run out and they still don't have a special use permit, they can apply. Staff is unlikely to be supportive of another temporary use permit.
Right. So my point is it comes back. It comes back through another process for a debate and discussion. That's my point. I apologize. Yes, it goes to the. Hence my motion for approval.
Chairman Loper.
Member Cardin.
I'll just throw out there, because a simple yes or no doesn't convey this sentiment. I appreciate what Member Ward is saying. Similar to the other case, what I'm encouraged here by is that the applicant is willing to do everything that's requested of them in the conditions. And so I'm feeling comfortable that these conditions would address the concerns of the neighbors. And so that is the reason I anticipate voting yes on this approval or on this request.
With that said, I'll go ahead and call for the question. Rosalie, if you'd please do a roll call vote.
Member Cardin,
Yes.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Member Ward,
No.
Vice Chairperson,
Yes.
Chairman Loper.
Yes.
Chairman, that's an approval by a vote of 4-1.
Thank you. As previously stated, I have a conflict with two of the items on the agenda that have been moved to the end of the agenda, and I'm hanging over the official hammer to Vice. Could you please remove any reference to Dallas Cowboys? Thank you.
Dallas Cowboys, it's Hamilton. Jeez.
From the distance, it looked like a star.
I know, but we're gonna have to culture you. I just want to point out that your staff reports no longer contain conditions. You may recall that I advised you that about 6 months ago, we actually won a case where the court said you really don't have authority to put conditions. What A now does is gives you language, if you want to use it, for your motion to memorialize exactly what the relief is that requested. A couple of the motions today made reference to conditions, and I would request that the members not refer to them as conditions. And with that, enjoy the rest of your day, Mr. Chairman.
Wayne, does that, I thought that was just for variances.
Just for variances.
Right, but temporary use permits are fine.
Yes, variances only, interpretations, temporary uses, et cetera, those you can continue. It's just on variances. What the court said was either they meet the test or they don't meet the test. So that was why one of the motions, or maybe both of them, made reference to condition. That's why I just wanted to bring it up. Staff has changed their language after we discussed it. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
We're going to take a quick restroom break and then we'll reconvene.
Yeah, because my opposition.
All right, we're going to get started again. Is Member Ward still on the go-to webinar? I don't see her screen on here anymore.
She's still connected to the meeting, but she must not have returned to her desk yet. She might need another minute or two.
All right, we'll give it one more minute for her to return. If anyone has her number and can contact her, that would be great. All right, I see that Member Ward is back, so we're going to get started. We are now on agenda item 3, BA 2022-021, the Kriegel property. And I will turn it over to Joseph to present.
Thank you, Vice Chair Person and members of the board. Variance case BA 2022-021, the Kriegel property, is for a proposed distance separation from a marijuana establishment to a school of 1,294.67 feet, where 1,500 feet is required per MCZO 805.2.1 and MCZO 804.2.45.B.2, as well as a proposed distance separation from a marijuana establishment to a public park of 475 feet, where 1,500 feet is required per MCZO 805.2.1 and MCZO 804.2.45.2.B.4. Next slide, please. The subject property is located at 12247 South Gilbert Road on a portion of APN's 304-23021F and 304-23021P, located approximately 250 feet north of the northeast corner of Gilbert Road and Warner Road in the Gilbert area. The subject site is zoned C3. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to locate a marijuana establishment in an existing building on site. The applicant has provided a meets and bounds description of the subject area that will be the result of a consolidation and lot split of the two subject parcels if the board grants the variance request. The site is zoned C3, where marijuana establishments are a permitted use if the marijuana establishment meets the required minimum separation distance of 1,500 feet to the closest boundary line of any affected parcel. The MCZO requires such separation from churches, schools, daycares, parks, playgrounds, adult-oriented businesses, and other marijuana establishments. This is a radio or as a crow flies separation to maximize distancing relief these uses may enjoy from a marijuana establishment. Next slide, please. The building on the proposed site fails to meet the required separation distance from both a school and a park. The school in question is the Greenhouse Montessori School located on APN 304-23020Z to the north, and a public park owned by the town of Gilbert located about 475 feet southwest of the subject site. Staff have received both support and opposition on the proposed variances. The town of Gilbert has expressed opposition. Per the town's response, a marijuana establishment would not be permitted in a commercial zoning district within the town, nor the subject site meets the 1,000-foot separation the town requires from residential areas if it were in the town. Staff also received opposition from an address located due north of the subject site that expressed general concern over the proposed use and also stated concern over potential of improper posting at the site. Staff does have photographic evidence as well as a signed affidavit documenting proper site posting. The 6 letters of support were generally describing positive relationships with the potential proprietor of the marijuana establishment, Mint Cannabis Incorporated, and these include business neighbors of other locations, the town of Guadalupe, which has a relationship with another Mint location, and some customers of other Mint establishments. The support letters do little to address the subject site, and none of them address the specific variances that the applicant has proposed. Based upon what the applicant has submitted and the staff analysis in this report, staff are not in support of this variance and offers the following findings. The applicant has failed to demonstrate that there is a peculiar condition facing the property because the subject site itself is relatively flat, does not present any unusual physical characteristics that would pose a hardship. The applicant is stating a hardship is present due to the proximity of existing uses. These uses have both been established well before the proposal of locating a marijuana establishment on site. Furthermore, both uses are accessible via pedestrian infrastructure provided along Gilbert and Warner roads. The school located to the north is along a straight path of which a sidewalk is provided over the entire stretch. Likewise, there are delineated crosswalks at the intersection of Warner Road and Gilbert Road, facilitating access from the proposed site to the existing park. The applicant has failed to demonstrate that the strict application of the zoning ordinance to the applicant's property has caused undue physical hardship that prevents the development of the property. The applicant argues that it is difficult to find a property that allows for the marijuana use. This matter is not a unique challenge exclusive to the subject property, and nothing preventing the applicant from utilizing the property in accordance with the multitude of uses available to them in the C3 zoning district, several of which have already been established on the subject property. However, if the board finds that the applicant has proven entitlement to the variance, then the board must state on the record the basis for that determination with the findings and conclusion in the motion to grant relief sought. In such event, staff would offer to the board the following memorialization of approvals. A variance approval establishes a minimum distance separation of 1,294.67 feet from a school for a consolidation of current APNs 304 to 3021F and 304 to 3021P. Variance approval establishes a minimum distance separation of 475 feet from a park for a consolidation of current APNs 304 to 3021F and 304 to 3021P. At this time, I would be happy to answer any questions of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Board members, do you have any questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I am going to open the public hearing and ask the applicant to come up.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Bill Lally, representing the applicant today, 2525 East Callenbach Road for the record. And Vice Chair and members, we do have a presentation. I know it's been a long day. We have a number of slides. I'm going to try to go through them quickly and get to sort of the heart of what we think is sort of the justification for the variance. But let me just give it to you right off the top so you start thinking about it. The justification for the variance is articulated in the code where you have a public or private elementary or secondary school. Our argument here is not only is this neither one of those. It's a Montessori school that serves ages from 14 months to 2 years. It's not a full elementary school. Walk you through why elementary schools are protected. And then secondly, the public park. The public park element, what we'll walk you through is that this is a small 6,000 square foot parcel that was a leftover from a 1970s subdivision that was a prior county subdivision. It shows up on no Gilbert maps. It's not identified as a Gilbert park. It doesn't have a parking lot. It doesn't have a sign. So to call it a public park that's in need of a large buffer from this particular use, I think is a stretch. And I'll walk you through why the connectivity between the two is very, very limited. So we'll go to the first slide. Again, I think staff did a great job of walking through the elements and the requests. Go to the second slide, and I'll try to go through some of these quickly as we move through the slides. Next slide, please. Again, staff had this exhibit up. What you can see is a very highly commercialized corner of Gilbert and Warner. The canal kind of bisects the corner, but on all of these corners, there's a large either industrial, commercial, retail uses happening. The red square to the north is the Montessori school. The little red dot to the south is the park that we were discussing. We can go to the next slide. So this is the school in question. It is a Montessori school. Post the application, I did Google and looked up what the school's primary use is. And again, so the code requires 1,500 feet from a public or private elementary or secondary school. So an elementary school is really K through 6. My kids are in elementary school as well. I have a kid in secondary school, which is a junior high, which is usually a 7th through 9. So these are schools, public or private, have age students all the way through 6th grade. Darren, did you have a question?
I was just acting Chairwoman Person. I was just going to indicate that if we are going to venture into the interpretation of what a school is, that's outside the variance hearing, and I think that's a different application to the board. From the staff perspective, there's no question this is a school. There needs to be a separation. I think we should speak to the separation, the argument for separation between a school and a marijuana establishment. If we're going to get into a discussion about what is a school, that's not before you today.
And
Understood. Thank
Madam
you,
Vice
Darren,
Chair,
for clarifying.
And Darren, I was laying the groundwork to get to my argument, which is, so a typical elementary school that is a protected use will have probably a couple hundred students. If you have grades K through 6, you're going to have, even a small private school, maybe 50, 60 students. This is a small house that has a small Montessori population of 14 months through 2nd grade. So when you're talking about why does an elementary school need to be buffered from a school? You have kids who are riding their bikes to the school, who are 5th and 6th graders, 4th graders walking to the school. When the top age of this school is 2 years or 2nd grade or 6 years old, you're not likely going to have any students leaving the school, walking, riding their bikes to the school. You have at the most 6-year-old students who are going to be dropped off by their parents and picked up by the parents. If we go to the next slide, you'll get an understanding of the location. So the drop-off point for the school is on the very north side of the school. This is where the parents, the kids are going to interact with the public. And again, these are at most 6 to 7-year-old children. The radius hits the back part of the site, which is a back parking lot, presumably for staff. If you go to the next slide, what you'll see is the front of the school. So this is the drop-off. This drop-off area is actually outside the buffer area. So this would meet the buffer area if measured. If we were in Gilbert, which is the local jurisdiction, they are at 1,000 feet for medical marijuana uses. So we not only exceed their regulations, but the reality is if you have Montessori students 7 years old or less coming in from the school, we're well outside the buffer area. And I only make the distinction between the schools because when you have an elementary or a junior high, you definitely have kids venturing well outside the populated area of this particular building to get to homes down the street, to get outside.
And I understand that, but I think the point is we need to keep the discussion to whether there's any justification based on the distances and not whether there's a distinction in what type of school it is.
And Madam Vice Chair, what I was trying to get at is the reality, the real world application of this particular site is this population is different than what a typical population of a school would be. So it is a unique situation that would garner, if this was an elementary school, a typical elementary school, I think I would have a harder chance describing why the variance would be needed. The fact of the population, I think, demonstrates the unique nature of it. So the next slide, please. Again, this just gives you an understanding of the location of the site and the location of the park. I'll be quick and go to the next slide as well. So this gives you an understanding of the parcel. So this is a parcel of land that I think the staff report indicates is identified as a park. We actually missed it in our first review. Staff missed it in their first review. It wasn't brought to our attention until the town of Gilbert sent a letter saying, hey, we have a city park that's within 475 feet away across Warner, across a very busy intersection. If you go to the next slide, what you'll see are a couple photos from the location towards this park. And again, I think the intent of the code is important. The intent of the code when it was designed years ago is to separate marijuana uses from, I think, sensitive areas where you would have maybe underage folks there. Parks would be one of them. And a city park would likely have kids playing, coming and going from the park. Our position is when you identify a public park as a protected use, it really should be a public park. It shouldn't just be a leftover parcel that the city doesn't even recognize on their own maps. If you go to the next slide, what you'll see is a couple pictures of the park. So again, the name of the park is the name of the adjacent subdivision, which is an old subdivision that was been platted since the 70s. This particular park has 0 parking, has no signage saying this is a Town of Gilbert park, welcome to so-and-so park, maintained by the Town of Gilbert, here's your parking. It's basically unused, unsigned, almost like a remnant of the subdivision to the south. So if you could go to the next slide, please. This is the Town of Gilbert's map where they identify with the little icons what their park system is. So, you know, as the applicant goes through and tries to meet the requirements of municipal city-owned parks, this is what we do. We go to the city map, we look at where they were identifying the city parks, and then we do a measurement from those. Then we go out and drive the site. And in fact, you know, we all missed it because it's not signed. It looks as if it's a small parcel next to a single family home that might be their personal area with the gymnasium in it. It doesn't jump out as a municipal park. So when you're talking about the distance from a public park, we would say if this was a large Gilbert Park parking lot, lots of kids coming and going, I would have a tougher argument for sure to say that we deserve a variance. Now, in this particular case, we are across from a major intersection. So the idea of even if kids were to come to this park, riding their bikes north across a busy intersection, you know, walking across a busy intersection, and the interaction between the two sites is very highly unlikely. Next slide, please. Again, here's the particular use. The use will be, it has been a C3, very heavy industrial or heavy commercial use for many, many years. Gilbert's letter says, hey, we only allow it in industrial. C3 is very, very much similar to Gilbert's industrial zoning in terms of the type of uses. And this isn't different. This is not much different than the billboard case you heard this morning where Gilbert says, we don't allow it under these circumstances. This is different. And so we're opposed to this particular use under this set of circumstances. And so our comment would be the same. Yes, Gilbert has different rules. For medical marijuana, they have 1,000 feet. You know, we are at 1,500 feet here in the county. We're trying to get a variance. But if we were in Gilbert, we would meet their intent. Their intent, 1,000 feet from a school. We don't believe it's a typical school where kids will be out walking to and from the school. And we don't believe that this is a true public park. So we don't think that the impact to a true public park will have the same impact of what you see elsewhere. Therefore, both situations are kind of unique. It's a unique situation where you have a park that is not really a park, and you have a situation where a school that doesn't really act like a full school. So both of those situations, I think, are unique enough to garner support for allowing a variance in a heavy C3 area for this particular use. I think we have a couple more slides, but I know there's maybe some members with some questions. I can see it on their faces, or at least some challenges to my arguments, and it's been a long day, so we'll go ahead and end it here and take questions.
Thank you. Yes, I know Member Schwartz has a question, so I'll let him go first.
So, Mr. Lally, there's an email I'm looking at from Joseph Mueller from Gilbert. Have you seen that?
Oh, I saw one from Kyle Maris. Yeah. I have it right here in front of me. Yeah.
Yes, from Kyle. Have you read that?
I have, yeah.
Okay, and so what does it say in the second paragraph?
They do not allow marijuana facilities within 1,000 feet of a public or private park.
Okay. And then what's the second sentence? Can you read that? Do you mind?
Public park is located on southwest corner of Gilbert and Warner Road, approximately 500 feet away.
Okay, all right. That, I just wanted to clarify that. I don't have any other questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Member Schwartz. Member Cardin, Member Ward, do you have any questions for Mr. Lally? Okay. I do have a question about the park.
Yeah.
So walk us through again how that became, you were made aware of it. It's not on the Gilbert map. Obviously, the county wasn't originally aware. You weren't originally aware. Just refresh my memory.
Yeah, Vice Chair Person, really the letter that we just read out loud into the record, the letter from the town of Gilbert to staff in response to the case. So the case was originally filed. The letter was received. We were asked to modify our application to include the variance to the park. We modified that application to include that. We then, because we wanted to keep the ball rolling, then we started to dig into like, oh gosh, I can't believe we missed a city park. We can't believe the staff missed a city park. We went out and tried to start to investigate this park, started with the maps, looked at the city maps where they identify all of their parks, they name them. You know, it's kind of a big deal if they're going to put taxpayer dollars towards maintaining a park. Couldn't find it anywhere. Drove out to the site, finally found it. And from our vantage point, this is not an intentional city park. If this was a leftover parcel that the city now owns, it's not treated, signed, or used as a typical park.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. So I would like to see if we have any other people that are here to speak. I know I had one speaker card, but it was retracted. I'm not seeing anyone looking like they want to come up here in person. David and Alicia, is there anyone online?
Yes, Veronica Gonzalez is online and registered.
Okay, great. Having a little trouble hearing, but if that person can state their name and share their thoughts, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. This is Veronica Gonzalez with the town of Gilbert. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. Again, thank you for this opportunity to speak on this case. The town is in opposition to the request, and not just because it fails to meet the statutory test for approval of a variance, as was outlined in the staff report, but also because, as noted before, establishments are only permitted in industrial zoning districts in the town of Gilbert. A couple of other things, the site is less than 1,000 feet away from existing residential districts to the north and to the east. The site is also less than 500 feet away from the public park known as Sonora Town Park, which we just discussed. The site is less than 1,000 feet from two existing private parks. These private parks are located within those residential areas that are to the north and to the east. The site is also approximately 200 feet away from an existing town of Gilbert multi-use path that is along the north bank of the Consolidated Canal, which is just to the east of this property. We have concerns because should annexation be requested in the future, the town would be annexing a non-conforming site. The request doesn't meet the minimum requirements of Maricopa County Zoning Ordinance. Therefore, we respectfully request that the board deny this variance request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Do any board members have any questions for Ms. Gonzalez?
Ms. Gonzalez, it was a little hard to hear you because of our speaker system. So could you repeat the back end of what you were saying? Because I had a hard time understanding you.
Sure. I'm not sure how far back I need to go. But, we just have concerns, if this property should annex in the future, the town of Gilbert would be looking at annexing a non-conforming site, which is always an issue for us. The request doesn't meet the minimum requirements of the Maricopa County Zoning Ordinance. So we just ask that taking these items into consideration that you do deny the variance request.
Thank you.
Did you hear it
Yeah,
that time? Okay. Are there any other questions for Ms. Gonzalez? Member Ward, Member Cardin? Are there any other speakers online?
There are no other speakers online.
Mr. Lally, would you like to respond to Ms. Gonzalez's comment?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chairperson. And this, as I mentioned, this is very similar to the case this morning where the prior applicant says Gilbert's rules are different than the county. And the county doesn't necessarily say, hey, Gilbert, we don't like your car wash. Gilbert's letter that I did read a portion of, also referenced a daycare across the street, which staff in the staff report reviewed and said, no, actually Gilbert's wrong in that case. Gilbert referenced today a private park, which again, our code doesn't reference private parks. It's publicly owned parks, it's city parks. Gilbert mentioned a multi-use trail in the area. Again, our code is different. Maricopa County code is different. If we go down the path of, well, town of Gilbert wants you to vary from a private park, which could be anything in a subdivision, residential per their code, trails per their code, daycare per their code, then these type of uses would never go anywhere. And in fact, Maricopa County has a very stronger buffer, 1,500 feet instead of 1,000. And they've articulated the items that Maricopa County believes are important. Public parks, daycares if it's a true daycare, schools if it's a true school, a park if it's a public park. There was a reference to, well, we're concerned because maybe we might annex in the future, we have a legal non-conforming use. Well, I think that probably is an argument for any county island anywhere in the entire valley. This particular site is at Gilbert and Warner. It's not far from the town center or the city hall. So if this was a target annexable area, Gilbert's been around for a long time. I think if they would have probably pursued annexation and worked with those landowners for a long time to get this into the town of Gilbert if it was a priority. So I guess in closing, I believe the code, has some justifications for uses that truly fit the real world uses, a true school, a true park. I don't believe either one of these uses are that at all. There's no characteristic. There was no arguments from Gilbert, no arguments from the residents say, well, no, that would be terrible next to the school, or my kids play at that park. In fact, we have 7 letters of support in this packet, 1 from another city, 2 from local business owners, 3 from local residents, 1 from an activist who's dealt with the applicant. And so that's got to be taken in consideration when looking at the applicant who's going to be operating something in a variance type situation. And you have to look at Gilbert's concerns about some of the things they mentioned today that are far outside the scope today and far outside the county's code, and say, are they just overreaching today to try to put things into the record that we are not here to discuss? And so I believe we do have proper justification for the variances. I don't think there's going to be any impact on those 2 uses. I don't think the town is going to be annexing anytime soon. And we have community support. So with that, be happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Lally. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it over to the board members. I'm not sure whose district this is in, but Member Cardin has his hand up, so go ahead.
Vice Chairperson, thank you. I got to first just say, I thought Mr. Lally did a great job presenting, and in fact presented some arguments that I hadn't anticipated. I also, in reading, I think it was some of the support letters, saw that members of the community, those who supported it, also feel like Mint, and cited some examples of how the Mint dispensary is really a valuable community member that tries to improve the community. Having said all that, and contrary to where you think I might be going, I'm still in belief that the staff report is accurate and is right. And so I'll make a motion, but certainly there can be discussion. I move to deny BA 2022-021 based on the analysis of the staff report.
Thank you, Member Cardin. I hear your motion. Is there any discussion, or would someone like to make a second? And we haven't heard from Member Ward or Member Schwartz if you have feedback as well.
Well, I'll echo what Mr. Cardin said, that I think staff did a great job of laying out the report. I certainly appreciate Mr. Lowley's arguments, but I think that I'm in agreement with Mr. Cardin, and I'm going to second his motion.
Thank you, Member Schwartz. So, Member Ward, is there anything you would like to say before we have Rosalie call for a vote?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I share the concerns. I definitely understand. I think you have a tough one here. But I share the feedback that it's not really a extenuating circumstances or peculiar conditions. So I also will be voting to deny. But Rosalie, we have a motion on the table by Member Cardin and a second by Member Schwartz to deny application A 2022-021.
Member Cardin?
Yes.
Member Schwartz?
Yes.
Member Ward?
I'm going to go no on this one. I actually appreciated the arguments, but thank you.
Vice Chairperson?
Yes.
Chair, that's a denial by a vote of 3-1. Chairman Loper was recused.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Lally, for bringing the case forward and sitting so patiently through what's been kind of a long morning. So we have what I believe is our final item on our agenda, number 5, BA 2022-033. And we're back to Daniel. Look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the board. Case BA 2022-033 is for the Arizona Sand and Rock property located in Supervisor District 5. The site is located at 5310 West Roser Road in the Levine area, and it is zoned Rural 43 and is approximately 24 acres. The request includes raising the height limit of light poles that illuminate parking areas to 36 feet, where 18 feet is the maximum allowed per the ordinance. The request would accomplish the following: allow 36-foot light poles for the parking and for illumination of parking and storage area of the entire lot. The current use of the parcel is overflow parking and storage of semi-trucks from nearby warehouses, allowed via an approved special use permit. The applicant has failed to demonstrate that there is a peculiar condition facing the property in that the property's existing use had been granted under a special use permit, and there are appropriate channels to vary the light height standard as done with the other development standards that have been varied under the special use permit. Thus, a variance is not warranted. The applicant has failed to demonstrate applying the requirements of the zoning ordinance to this property that has this peculiar condition. An undue physical hardship exists that prevents the development of the property. The property had been granted a special use permit varying the design standards, and the appropriate channel would be to modify that special use permit. The applicant has demonstrated the peculiar condition of physical hardship is not self-created in the line of title. The property owner pursued a special use permit to develop the to vary the development standards as part of the special use permit that they've received approval for. And the applicant has failed to demonstrate that the general intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance would be preserved despite the variance, because the ordinance allows site plan amendments for holders of approved special use permit. It has been demonstrated that the increased lighting will not adversely impact adjacent residential neighborhoods and open space areas. However, the special use permit is a legislative process with a mandated public outreach that would include proximate homeowners associations. However, if the board finds that the applicant has proven entitlement to the variance, then the board must state on the record the basis for that determination with findings and conclusion in the motion to grant the relief sought. In such event, staff would offer the following to memorialize the variance approved. Variance approval establishes a maximum height of 36 feet for APN 104-64001A for lighting structures used to illuminate parking spaces. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I have one question. Why do they need higher lights? What is?
So the applicant is requesting the higher standard because the current use under the special use permit is for storage of essentially semi-trucks, semi-trailers, and the 18-foot is not high enough for them to feel that the lot is secure and illuminated enough. The standing trailers are about 18 feet, around 10 to 18 feet in height anyway. So the current limitation of the ordinance doesn't allow adequate lighting for the entire lot.
Oh, thank you for explaining that. Are there any other questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing and ask the applicant to come up, please.
Good afternoon now. It's been a long morning and day, so I do have a presentation. I feel it's important to give a little bit of context, so I'll try to run through the slides as quickly as I can to give a little context of why we're asking for the variance and help further address Vice Chair's question about why we need this. So if we, I can. Yeah, Shane Alleman with Tiffany Bosco, 2525 East Camelback Road for the record. Thank you. All right, next.
I forget when I know the person. I'm like, oh, I already know who you are.
No, yeah. Yeah, if we go to the slide. So this is just an aerial context view. And what I wanted to show with this is the industrial nature that has happened here for several decades. As you can see to the west, to the east, to the north, we've also got the Salt River. And even to the south, we've got the CMX gravel pit. This has been in existence even prior to the residential neighborhood that was there. And currently right now, trucks, you can see those yellow lines that I have on the map. Those are trucks that are going by all the time next to the neighborhood. So this has clearly been an established area for industrial uses over several decades. And then the residential neighborhood, which is in the city of Phoenix, came into existence probably about 7 years ago. But I think it's important to understand the context of what's going on around here with the industrial nature. And as you go to the next slide, you can see a little bit closer up some of the surrounding uses that are on there, some of those yellow roads where the trucks do traverse by with the sand and gravel uses that are happening. We also have a crane yard directly east to us that's directly adjacent to the residential neighborhood. So if we go to the next slide, we did have a special use permit that was approved, and I was involved with that last year to allow for the use. And this was to allow Amazon to come in. And as you can imagine, you know, there is a lot of industrial space, but with Amazon moving so quickly, with everyone wanting their goods as quickly as possible, they needed extra storage space that they couldn't fit within their warehouse. So they have a number of these spaces around the valley whereby they have these trucks that are sitting on the lot. And it's, let's say, for instance, you have widget A, which can't be fulfilled at the warehouse that's not there, but they store it out on these trucks. They'll run out, get this truck, pull it back to the warehouse, and then fulfill the need for whatever widget is requested or required by the consumer. And so as you could imagine, with the number of trucks, trailers that are on the site, it's millions and millions of dollars of inventory. And they have been targeted in the past on other sites where people have done elaborate schemes. We're trying to break into these where they can try to figure out what equipment or inventory is on there. And so if we go to the next slide, we can talk about some of the safety and security concerns, which is it's an utmost importance for Amazon. So they do have a secured security guard on site that's there 24/7. It is gated. However, the lighting is extremely important. So they have protocols where the security guard is supposed to drive around on very often intervals throughout the site, and lighting is important. If lighting is not there, they can't see if people are hiding in between trucks or people have, which has happened on other sites, and they can't have the security that they need. So this lighting is needed on the site. So the request that we're asking for is Article 1102.7.6. And as you can see, this ordinance is geared towards parking spaces. And this is where we're a little bit different or unique. We're not really, we do have parking spaces for truck, but we're not a parking lot or a parking space as, you know, under the normal definition of the term. Under circumstances, if we were able to be able to build a building, we'd have a building on site, secured housing, our lighting might be able to be higher on that building than the 18 feet. But because we are considered a parking lot or have parking spaces, we're relegated to 18 foot on the height. So we are asking for that to be raised because you could imagine the trucks on there, the truck trailers are about 14, 15 feet. At 18 feet, it's only about 3 to 4 feet difference. So you don't get the lighting that you need. And I'll show you here in a bit, when we do go up to 36 feet, what happens with that, with the lighting on the site and what they're able to have with that. Because at 18 feet, it would basically be, well, one, they'd have to have more lighting than they're proposing with the 36 feet poles. And it would be reflecting off of those trucks, and it just wouldn't capture all of the spaces that they need to for security purposes. So if we go to the next slide, you can see a representation of the layout. That hatched mark is where the actual storage area is that is being lit. There is a large drainage area to the south of it. That's an additional buffer there. But that's the area that's lit that you see there with the hash marks. So if we go to the next slide, looking at the variance test, our property is located directly to the Rio Salado Wash. This area is dark. They've had issues with properties to the east of us, the Crane facility and others, with people breaking on the site. And so they can hide. There's all great places to hide in that wash. It can be easy to hop over fences and steal stuff. And so security is very important for our site. So it's isolated at night. These places, the mining operations shut down. So there's not other security or other people, eyes on the street per se, that are there. So that's a unique condition to our site. And again, we're different from industrial type users. Yes, the code says parking spaces, but we're different from being just a parking lot or having just being parking spaces. And we would love to have a building to be able to secure all the valuable material in there, but that's not the nature of the use that we're allowed to do on the site. Again, I talked about the trailers being about 14, 15 feet with 18-foot light poles. It's just not adequate to provide the lighting. So variance test number 2, the next slide. Of course, security is a fundamental right of any property owner, especially with Amazon having the millions and millions of dollars of equipment on their site. They have to have security. It's utmost importance. And without that proper lighting on the site, they can't enjoy that security. They can't have the secure inventory that they have. If we go to variance 3, I think this is an important aspect of it. No negative impact. So allowing 36 feet of height allows for lesser light poles than if we were relegated to doing 18, we'd have to have them more across it. It would create more lighting on the site. There will be no light spillage on the property. And if you look at the next slide, that'll show you the analysis that our electrical engineer. So you can see in the red line, and so just south of that red line is where the drainage area is. And then there's little red dots. Those are the 36-foot poles. And so the analysis when you're at 36 feet is it would capture all of those parking spaces with 36 feet. If you can imagine, if we were at 18 feet, it would be lower than that, and you wouldn't be able to have the adequate lighting that you need. Of course, going to the next slide. Lost my slides. Go ahead and hit the next one. This just kind of drills down and shows the industrial nature of what's going on around us. The blue indicate really industrial mining type uses that are occurring. There is some state land that's sitting within the wash. And we are approximately 1,075 feet, the light poles from the residential. So the light spillage on it being able to go into the residential neighborhood is nil. There will be shielding that I'll show you here in a bit with the type of lighting that we're providing, and that's another thing that we're doing is we're providing the shielding, and we'll also be in compliance with all other light codes under the county ordinance. So next slide should show us the light fixtures. So you can see that little that shield that is on there that's being added to it. So that will be around the perimeter so that any light will not be able to go out beyond the property line, but we will be hyper focused on the trailers. And with the height being able to be up, it gives that maximum coverage where all the trucks are parking on the site. So with that, next slide, the summary. Of course, our variance request is for 36 feet height, where 18 is allowed in a parking area. All other county ordinances in regards to lighting will be followed. The variance will allow Amazon to enjoy its rights and to be able to secure the property so that they're not losing property from theft. And the granting of the variance will not harm or provide any negative impacts or harm any of the surrounding properties. And we've received no opposition. And I will say the previous special use permit, we had no opposition whatsoever, even noticing the neighbors to the south of us and knowing what the use that we were going to propose. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and would appreciate your approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Alleman? No questions. Thank you. Oh, we do have a question. Okay.
Can you bring up the aerial photo showing, or the site plan showing where all the lights are potentially located? No, back, it's the one with the red. There you go. So, fortunately, a little familiarity with trucks because our family was in the trucking business for a long time. So I understand the issue of the height. If you had to put 18-foot lights in, how many more lights would you have to add to the parking lot?
I'm not sure, Member Schwartz. We didn't get far into that analysis. I just know that we would have to do more. I don't know the amount though. I apologize.
So it's a combination of surveillance and cost.
Exactly. Yeah, because you would have to provide more poles, which would be more cost. And then we'd probably have to put them out, closer to the property line, which could, provide a spillage off of the site. So we felt that this was the best solution to be able to balance all of the needs and requirements for the site.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? All right. Seeing none. We've cleared the room out, so I'm not seeing anyone else that wants to come down and speak about this. What about online?
There are no speakers online.
Okay, and I do not have any speaker cards. I don't see any opposition registered to speak. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it over to the board. Member Ward, I believe this is in your district, so if you want to start us off, that would be great.
I would like to thank you very much, Vice Chair Person. This is turning into a high crime area. There's a lot of homeless people looking to find places where they can get a good night's sleep due to a lack of lighting. And so I support 100% approving this variance. It's appreciated. It seems like we're often looking to asking our storefronts and our different neighbors to add additional lighting for safety. And so I thank them for coming forward and offering to do this. So I would like to make a motion approving.
We have a motion. Do we have a second or any other comments?
Second.
Second by Member Cardin. I'm not seeing any other comments. So Rosalie, you can take a roll call vote, please.
Member Cardin?
Yes.
Member Schwartz?
Yes.
Member Ward?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson?
Yes.
Chair, that's an approval by a vote of 4-0.
And Rosalie, I don't know when Member Ward made her motion, if she identified the case number, or we need to do that, but.
I did
Yeah.
not.
I think we're
2033. I think we're good.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you. You too. Now I am supposed to ask staff to please advise Chairman Loper to rejoin the hearing. Can we just call it? Okay, done, adjourned.
Thank you.